Please don't hear any of this, Brad.
And Dad's like, I got the fuck out of there. I was like, oh man, you didn't partake?
Do you fear death?
Oh, one of the greatest lines of all time.
I could have chopped it. I could have chopped it.
Trumpinator 2020.
Making me 30 sides of red sauce.
Listened to so much. Are you
That needs two, motherfucker.
Episode 55. Thanks for coming out, buddy.
Yep.
You promised to share all the secrets of the universe with me.
Yeah, man.
So
that's why I'm here.
let's go.
All right.
Start. Where we at?
Where we're going to start?
I don't know, man. I wanted to talk a little bit about you're preaching this weekend, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm going to do a little thing there, a little 10-minute deal.
Yeah.
Guys that miss church
Yeah.
to race on Sunday, just a little devotional kind of thing.
What was it about the racing that got in your blood so hard? Because you've been doing this since you were a young man.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I've just always liked motorcycles for one
Yeah.
thing, and I enjoy the competition. Enjoy the. Okay.
You're good.
I enjoy the competition. I have always enjoyed the adrenaline of racing them. You know, so I get in and out of it. I've raced since I was 15, and then I would be out of it for a little while, and then I'd get back in it and be out of it. So I've dipped in and out of it, but I have pretty much been racing and riding my whole life. So
Mom actually found the pictures of that race that me and Ben were at.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
How cool is that?
Yeah, it's wild. She's got a lot of that good stuff. She's got scrapbook kind of piles
Yeah?
that she's working on. So
Wow.
yeah, I remember that day, and I must have been 5 or 6. Wes is how old now?
Ben?
Yeah, or Ben? Yeah.
Yeah, he's
Wes.
what is he now? He's 40. He's
He's a
40.
couple years younger than me, so he'd have been 3 or 4, and I was
Yeah.
5 or 6. But
Yeah. So yeah, I wonder where that was at.
couldn't tell you. I don't think any of it was labeled, but I definitely remember that day going out there, and of course Theo started riding. Football season's over, so
So he's ready to roll.
he's ready to roll. We
Okay.
found him a little electric bike for Christmas that we picked up. Dad and I got it ready for him. So
Cool.
give him something to ride while he's saving up for the real thing.
Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah, I'm almost more excited
Well,
than
you
he
know-
is for Christmas.
The thing about the motorcycles is that once you start down the route, you don't have like a
Money.
whole lot of extra money
Yeah.
to do anything really bad with
Exactly.
because you're spending it on your motorcycle
Yeah,
or going somewhere.
yeah. Between robotics and drums and motorcycles, I don't
There's a
have to
lot of
worry
stuff.
about money ever again. Having any, that is.
Having any.
Right.
That would be the
Exactly.
right there.
Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, I've just always kind of enjoyed it. I've always liked just like I say, the adrenaline, getting out there and going. It's always something to look forward to and
Yeah.
get out there and do. It's a little bit different with the woods racing than it is motocross, but in motocross, that's a pretty cool feeling.
So what's the difference between just as somebody just now getting into it?
Mhm.
What are all the different kinds of races?
So motocross is what you'll be watching when you come out.
yeah.
That's on an established track, and everybody lines up bar to bar.
Okay.
They drop the gate, and everybody
Yep.
goes. Okay. So in the woods riding, like there's cross countries and hare scrambles and enduros, and they're all a little bit different, but all of those take place just in the woods, just you in the woods, and
Yeah.
somebody's behind you or whatever.
Yeah.
There's so many people on your minute, or depending on the thing.
Yeah.
But hare scramble is more like a motocross in the woods. They drop the hammer. Cross country the same way. Everybody goes, and so it's kind of an adrenaline sport too. You get into that, and you're weaving through the woods and all that. That is actually a really pleasing part of riding a motorcycle,
Yeah.
because when you're in those tight confines like that, you begin to develop your rhythm and things
Right.
like that, and it's kind of a zen moment almost.
Yeah.
When you get it right,
I
the
can
rest
see
of the
that.
time you're just flying through the trees.
Mhm.
But there's all sorts of ways to go, and I mean that's just with dirt bikes.
Yeah.
So which is my chosen way to ride.
So I know we had a pretty good phone conversation a while back before the podcast. Wish we'd have recorded that. That was a good conversation.
Great conversation.
But just for people who haven't, I would like to hear again how you got into the preaching thing and kind of what your story's been with that, because I found that very fascinating.
Well, let's see. Let me back up to an appropriate place. And I'm going to, one of the reasons I told you I was going to have difficulty doing this is my memory is not good, and we'll get around to that. And recall a year is sometimes a problem. I think back in the mid '90s, my wife and I started going to fellowship. We didn't go to church, and I was saved at Fellowship Bible Church. And over time, they had an outreach to the poor called Samaritan House at the time. Gave food and clothing, things like that. Well, I was with a little group of people that we decided we wanted to plant a church there so that the people that came there would have a place they felt comfortable coming.
Right.
Because obviously, if you're in need of those kinds of services, you don't fit in everywhere in town.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah,
so,
and that's important.
Yeah, that was the idea behind it. And so we started out, a little group of us, we planted the church, and then there was a focus out of fellowship of beginning to be church planners. So there's 6 congregations that kind of happened at once, okay? And what they did was they would put me on staff as I was being trained.
Right.
We did a 2-year training program on church planning and Bible study and all that stuff.
Sure.
Just to kind of prep you to be able to do it. And so over time, that moved into a full-time role, and I did it pretty much full-time for maybe 14 years or so.
Yeah.
So my main job was just taking care of the little church there, and so we shared the preaching, we shared all those types of things, but it put me up once or twice a month.
Yeah. What's your philosophy on God?
Well, I mean,
you seem to be a little different breed than the standard Baptist preacher.
Oh yeah. It would be. And we can unpack that some tonight if you'd like. But I would just say that I do believe that God exists.
Right.
Probably in ways that what am I trying to say? Most Christians follow the dogma of whatever, their denomination is.
Right.
And for me, and I did. But
Sure.
for me, as I kept moving through things, I began to see God is really much bigger, much more entwined with just the universe as we know it.
Right.
Which Scripture speaks to.
Sure.
But it took some getting there.
Yeah.
And on the other hand, I think some people would understand a little bit of what I'm saying, but would think I was like some kind of cosmic hippie when I lay it out,
you
right?
might be.
Yeah, and I am.
There ain't nothing wrong with that.
There ain't nothing wrong with cosmic hippies.
Because I've always struggled with the dogma
Mm-hmm.
of the Southern religions and the kind of the different interpretations that they have. They seem to have God all figured out.
Mm-hmm.
But to me, God is so complex that our minds
Yeah.
can't even fathom what that really means.
Right.
But you seem to be on something that's a little closer to my spirituality.
Yeah, and we probably are, because I find a lot of people that kind of move to a place like that, generally after they've spent enough time in say a denomination or a group that they don't exactly align with, and they have questions outside that. And I think that's kind of one of the things with me is I'm never trying to talk anybody out of what they believe.
Sure.
So I'm perfectly happy having anybody going to church 3 times a week wherever they are, and they're happy and they're fulfilled and they have their community. Wonderful. I may not believe what you believe, but I'm
Sure.
glad you are doing what you do.
Yeah.
So when I share things that make a difference to me personally. And a lot of people would go, well, that's kind of crazy. But to me, it has allowed me to move on my path closer to God.
Yeah.
And so that's just kind of the way I've come to it is this is everybody's looking in or looking for, and it's really hard to get nailed down what you believe. But once you do it and you're happy and you're in there and you're doing the right things with it, wonderful.
Right.
You know. But yeah, I think that you and I and others, lots of others, are just a little bit on the kind of out of the rules and regulations phase of it.
Yes.
You know.
Very much so.
Yeah.
So what was that journey like? How did it change over the course of years? Was that
well? I mean,
pretty organic?
I was typical evangelical, and I had certain beliefs about what the Bible said and what it didn't say. I would just kind of fit that mindset until it started not really making sense to me.
Okay.
And I think one of the reasons is I did study a lot.
Yeah.
Because as we talked about, I've got some mental issues, and one of those looks right there. I'd study for hours and hours and hours, and stuff I would just go, well, that doesn't make sense. And then you find out other things that other people won't tell you because they're afraid they're actually going to tell you and you'll lose your faith or something. But to me, I wanted to know the truth. That's the primary thing to me,
100%.
Right? So when I look at this stuff, I'm like, well, this doesn't make sense, and this doesn't make sense, and this doesn't make sense. So I began moving in the direction of what did make sense to me.
Sure.
Not going to make sense to everybody, but when you are primarily tasked with teaching Scripture, that's a problem.
Right.
Okay? Because, once again, if your heart's desire is not to have any of the people out there because you love them go through any angst, if they're happy where they're at, I don't need to be throwing new information on them that changes all that.
Right.
It's one of the reasons I decided to back out.
Yeah.
Because I did love those people. I don't want them, sitting there going, well, you said this, and now, it's like, no, wherever you're at's good. And I realize I'm the one off the sheet of music here.
Yeah.
And that's really the big thing. It's like I'm the one off the sheet compared to everybody else sitting here. So
and that's
guess
how
who?
I've always felt.
Right.
In everything I do.
Exactly.
Off the sheet. I don't. Yeah.
So that's kind of what it looked like. And I know we talked on the phone. We talked about, the modern term deconstruction.
Yeah.
Which has a bad name, but I think if you look at if it's deconstruction to nothing, that would be a problem. But if it's deconstruction to a reconstructed place, like I feel like I've gotten, then I think that was necessary for me.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's uncomfortable sometimes to have everything you believe challenged
Right.
or questioned or brought into closer scrutiny, but it moves you forward ultimately. You need to have those kind of almost like mini crises.
Yeah, and that's a great way to say it. You just get to a place and go, well, I've thought that. And a lot of times you'll start in on a plank, a big chunk of doctrine.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then you'll actually go start digging around for it and find out, dude, it really ain't there.
Yeah.
Okay, you take marriage. Okay, in the Old Testament, and it had changed some by the New Testament. Marriage was, so and so's daddy said you could marry her if you brought him 2 goats or something.
Yes.
I mean, and that's what it was.
Yes.
It wasn't, there wasn't love involved.
No.
It had nothing to do with that. But what it was a whole different structure.
Right.
And you have to take that into account.
Yes.
As you come forward with it,
Right.
So there's a lot of times you start on like big chunks of things and you really don't find a lot to make it work. But it is the core beliefs of a certain group of people, then that's just the way it is.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you have different historical contexts for different periods of the Bible. Different things were acceptable then. The red letters, to me, I mean, I still base my general moral philosophy on, the biblical teachings. It just, with so many different denominations and so many interpretations, it annoys me a little bit that there are people who say, no, ours is the right way.
One.
This is the right way.
And then I'll quote you the scripture, and and here's and not everybody does this, dude. I don't want to be getting down on anybody, but
yeah, no, certainly
what the deal is that when there, if you look at the number of books that's been written about how to read scripture, if you
Right.
wanted to put the books that's been written about Romans, one of the critical books of the New
Yeah.
Testament, you couldn't get them all in this building, and every one of them's different.
Yeah.
Okay, so who in there am I going to believe, right?
Sure.
So it becomes, really does then become a thing of the heart, right? This is saying this to me, and this is how I intend to live with it.
Yeah.
You know.
Certainly. And you also had many books that were written during that time period that the Catholic Church chose to leave out of what is and what isn't canon. They were a little bit more behind the different translations, have different meanings. So, I mean, it goes deeper than just the interpretation of the English versions.
Yes.
I mean, you can get down into the Hebrew
Yes.
and the Greek and
Exactly, and which is sometimes really fascinating, and then sometimes you're splitting hairs. That I mean,
Yeah.
honestly, what the Greek language, what Aramaic, and all those were then, we've got a rough idea how that all runs out. But there's modern Greek now, and it's
Right.
reformed over the years, and it's like. I tell people all the time, there are different time periods these things are all written, and then
No, absolutely.
scholars are really good at knowing when it is, and it's pretty amazing. For instance, if I told you there's a field of Mustangs down there, okay, 100 years ago you'd go, well, there's only one thing that could be is a whole
There's a
bunch of
horse,
horses down
yeah.
there, but now it can be a whole bunch of cars.
Sure.
Okay, so the language changes over time, and then they mark that language, and they
Yeah.
mark how it's written and the medium it's written on and all that, and they go, well, this was written about here,
Yeah.
and then they argue it out and come to some consensus on it, and I mean, thing of it you have to realize is these guys spend their entire lives sometimes looking at one book.
Yeah.
I mean, it's incredible. They're scholars of the Bible, right?
Yeah.
And so they have a right, and really great information to share with us about those things. And some of them will share it from a very denominational standpoint. Some will share it from others. But there's tons of different. For instance, literature. Tons of different kinds of literature. So if you go through the first probably 150 years of the church after the crucifixion, there were tons of books written.
Right.
Okay, which we found now, and you'll find that the entire Christianity was very divided even at that point.
Yes, sir.
About what they believed or didn't believe.
Absolutely.
Okay, so you had that going on from the very start.
Oops. Yeah.
It's okay.
Makes it authentic.
It's okay. So you had that going on from the very start. Hey, you want one of my no-alcohol beers?
I'll try one.
Okay. I found these to be pretty good.
Yeah, I'm sure it tastes good.
You know.
There you go.
All right. There we go. I thought you.
Here.
Oh,
Get you
look at that. Thank
Urban
you, sir.
Dictionary koozie there.
But yeah, I mean, so then you start running down, like you said, in the final selection of the canon, there were many books that were left out that the Catholic Church would actually retain. But when during the Protestant Reformation, they started really running a bunch of those out.
Right.
And so some were in and some were out. There were canons that were completely different that first recognized, I think, in the 200s that canon would include certain books and not other books. And it could be because they didn't have them.
Right.
So I guess what I'm trying to say is it's difficult to know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Everybody should have some humility when they come to the Bible.
Well, certainly, but that's not the way I had ever been exposed to the Bible, and that was always kind of a turnoff to me.
Yeah.
And that there's only one way to interpret this,
Right.
and obviously, especially you look at something like Revelation, and there's so many schools of thought. There's the school that believe it's already come to pass. There's the school that believes that there's going to be a great suffering coming. There's several different trains of thought. It's wild to think that anybody can be surefire, dead
Right.
set on here's what I've been hearing since I was a kid.
Right.
Here's what this is or what this means, and I don't know that you're going to know until it's all over.
Well, yeah, and I mean, the thing of it is that book's been around a long time, but even when they were selecting canon, my understanding is that there were two books that the Western and the Eastern Church wanted to bring to canon. One of them was Revelation. There was Hebrews. So those two books were kind of edgy out there books.
Sure.
And you'll find, you look back over time, that there were people going like, we don't have any idea what this means. Like within a few hundred years.
Yeah.
Right? That was part of the vetting process of making that canon. And people were like, nobody knows what that means.
Yeah.
You know?
It's wild.
Yeah. So if they were having trouble with it, I'm sure we will have trouble with it.
And I know I don't remember all the details of it, but I know we touched on this a little bit. Life outside of our solar system, highly likely.
Highly.
Do you think we have craft here, or do you think what the military is guarding is?
I mean, they would have to. I think they would have to be a different form. They wouldn't. I don't think they could be carbon based like us and move like that. But what do I know about what got created? This is a vast universe.
Yeah.
You know, and there may be multiples. You know, and I mean, if we take God and we go, okay, look, if He created this, it can contain whatever He wanted it to contain.
Mm-hmm.
But I do feel like it's a little bit arrogant to go, this all happening right here and nothing else.
Yeah. It makes you wonder, well, was God one entity? Was He a race of people?
So, I mean, the whole chicken and the egg.
Yeah,
thing
that's
about
an
God,
endless discussion,
right?
Yeah.
That is the endless discussion, and I would hold just about anyway. If you look from the strictly biblical standpoint, He's pre-existent to everything, okay? But we're not really told pre-existent how many times.
Right.
Right? I mean, we don't know how many times this universe has done this.
Yeah.
Right? So what if it's done that 10,000 times? We don't know.
We don't even know on Earth's history how many times. Like, I have a feeling we've achieved technological advancement before. And I mean,
yeah. I mean, there's too many things that you see that you go, all right, how did they accomplish that?
Like the pyramids are a great example. How did we do that? Yeah. I mean, the common explanation of sand sleds and slave labor and stuff, when you're talking about 300 feet up in the air,
starts losing relevance pretty quick.
It gets kind of nuts.
But they're still putting out theories on that. I mean, nobody will know. You know, I was thinking about these stones. I don't even remember where they're at. They're so closely aligned that like the distance is a cigarette paper down the whole block.
Yes.
Okay. They're that perfect. Now, we can't. I mean, we can only turn metal. It's like a rock. We ain't going to do that. Right?
But even some of the artwork that is perfectly symmetrical, that you'd have to have modern tools to do. I mean, some of the stuff that was being done thousands of years ago.
And some people would say there was a civilization. People that study the Bible say there would be an age before this. Okay, that was highly sophisticated. And then, and I don't know all the ins and out arguments about that, but. The idea that it was destroyed and rebuilt, or flooded and rebuilt, or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's possible. I think archaeology is one of those fields, just like anything else, where they're going to be very protective of the narrative and try and control that. So if people come along like Graham Hancock's, who are trying to just ask questions, Ancient Civilizations is his show on Netflix, which I've only seen the first season, but it's fascinating that they use this LiDAR stuff now that basically allows you to see under the canopies of the
what's
trees
under there.
and what's under there. Right. Like places that have just not been, a part of society for hundreds of thousands of years.
But yet there'll be some.
But there's a structure
temple
under
complex
there.
Or something under there.
What's going on with that kind of stuff? That's always fascinated me.
So I think if you just look at just the mystery of Earth, or if you place yourself in the mix in a galaxy, okay, which we've got some pretty good images of now. It's like, and that's one little old tiny teensy galaxy floating around in this huge expanse. It's like what else could be out there? I don't know, but I don't rule it out at all. I don't think planet Earth is the whole deal or nothing but.
Yeah, if you think of it as like, is the sun like the nucleus of an atom, and that's how small we are compared to
very well could be.
We just can't conceive. Like AI is coming on board right now pretty hard. It went from being a headline in science journals a year ago to now my kids are just creating pictures
Yeah.
on AI with whatever
Yeah.
they can possibly imagine. People at work using them to create sales documents, right? Setting all these parameters. It's helping us in our society right now. And this is something that is so new and so fresh, and I feel like people don't even question where this stuff's coming from. It's new technology.
Yeah.
I want it. I got to have it.
And the loop, my son always tells me this, that like what takes 10 years to accomplish in technology and doubles every 5 or so. It's
Yeah,
something,
the
it's like this
exponential rate.
exponential
Yeah.
growth.
Well, with AI, I think it's every year it almost doubles.
Yeah, and so, in like all technology, some of it's going to be good and some of it's going to be bad. But like taking AI and then I don't know. Have you ever looked into quantum computing?
I've studied it some. I'm not smart enough
I don't understand
to understand it, but
I
I've
don't
looked
understand
into it.
But I do know that it uses the superposition to get more places. And they're saying basically you can feed the same problem to one of our computers. It would take 10,000 years for it to figure
Right.
it out. And this will be able to do it like in 30 seconds.
Yeah.
So all the security measures that we have around the world, if anybody gets this online, which they're working really hard on,
Yeah.
they're done.
They're toast.
Yeah. And now they're working on how do we secure stuff
Yeah.
by using the same quantum principle.
Yeah, that's one thing I get real hypercritical of government a lot of times, but that's a tough job, national security.
My
So,
gosh.
my hat also goes off to the people
Yeah.
who are good people who are trying to protect this country from things like that. I mean, when you get into the quantum computing era,
Oh, man.
I mean, that's going to change things even more than it is now.
Yeah. Well, your quantum computer is throwing drones at you
Yeah.
because you've got a fleet of 40,000 of them sitting here to go in the next minute. I think if anything's being proven around the world right now is like conventional warfare really, it's pretty well done. You can go ahead and say it is, but when you can sink ships with what is essentially a remote controlled jet ski, how much longer? I mean, it gets to be a point where you're going, why in the heck are we even doing this? What are you going to get out of this?
Yeah.
And so, I mean, eventually this technology, all this stuff leaks down to the bottom level here, which is us, and we can do crazy things with it now. Imagine what'll be 10 years from now.
Well, do you fear AI, or do you think it's going to be a tool that's going to help us? Because to me, it's like a hammer, right? You can build a house with it. You can kill somebody with it.
That's what I would say. I mean, we're already seeing all the things that it does badly, but that doesn't mean that it can't be, the parameters can't be changed unless you do whatever you want to.
Right.
Now, you can still get around that.
Well, it feels like a child right now. It's learning.
Yeah.
It's young. It's learning humanity.
Yeah. So, I mean, I read something the other day. It was like that now they take these, like, I think it was like 1,400 articles a day in medical journals. So your doctor, who's seeing patients all day long, might get one of those read in a month.
Sure.
Okay. And so what they're doing with AI is feeding them in, and it basically condenses them and lets them take the similarities and start working with it, which I think is going to be huge for healthcare.
I think healthcare is going to be one of the biggest areas of benefit for AI in diagnostics. I'm hearing that as well.
Man, and just the miniaturization of things. I mean, it's like there's stuff you can do in the human body right now that, I mean, it's amazing.
Yeah.
I can remember pacemakers used to be like that,
Yeah.
and now they're like this.
Yeah.
I mean, it's amazing what the stuff is, medical appliances have.
Yeah, certainly.
Yeah.
Yeah. What does it scare you? Would you put something like a Neuralink into your brain if you could get instant recall, if it could tap into your memory synapses?
Man, I tell you, to me, I'd rather just stay me no matter how screwed up it is.
Yeah.
Honestly. That's not something now.
I feel like that's a decision we're going to be faced with in our lifetimes.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they'll be able to go, I feel like, go in your head and repair things that have happened.
Yeah.
But, here's the amazing thing. The human brain is absolutely so completely amazing at what it can do.
It really
it's
is.
like it's the supercomputer.
It is.
And they're learning more and more about how to retrain and do those things now.
And there's so much of our brain we don't use.
Oh,
and that's always, I've done some rabbit hole dives on that.
Yeah.
why do we have those sections of the brain? Is that something that we used to use
Well,
once upon a time, or
that's the question. Why is
were
that
meant to use?
Right.
Right? I mean,
Right. Or will at some point use. Maybe,
right.
You know. I mean, if you think about it, there's just redundant systems all the way through the body. So, you know, like neuroplasticity and the retraining of the brain to get around damaged portions is a real thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Well, they're piping around. That doesn't mean they're using some back edge of your brain, but they are getting around different things to rewire you.
Right.
So it's totally fascinating because if you think about it, humanity up to this point, I don't know where you'd put the cutoff, but maybe gunpowder. But when people used to beat themselves over the head all the time, okay, so head injury has to have been, their brain was no different than ours. Head injury has to be a feature of all history.
Mm-hmm.
And you look at these people and you go, man, they were terrible. They were awful. Well, maybe they're all wired that way. You know, I mean,
Yeah.
the thing of it is if we can suffer a brain damage that basically will change our personality, you know, what those people had the same brain.
Yeah.
You know, they're finding. My son was telling me this the other day. They're finding that serial killers a lot of times will have two things in common. One of them is that they were abused. The other thing is they took a real hard hit in their head when they were young.
Really?
Yep.
I hadn't heard that.
So they're saying that this is a commonality among a lot of them, and they feel like that when they were younger and they were still in this trauma phase of their life,
Right.
they got whacked, you know, and it may have locked in something funny. And I think that's the whole thing to the brain to me is people are so dang judgmental. Why don't this person do that? It's like, man, if you had to spend your time in a lot of people I know's brain, you would be like crying to get out of there, right?
Yeah.
And that's reality for that person.
Yeah, that's a tough thing, understanding other people's psyche.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like this thing, just be cool, man. Just everybody be cool, and then it's, you know, we're all good.
Right.
But I find myself being judgmental about people who are judgmental, right?
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
It's like, why
we're
are you
human.
such a, it's like, well, these things aren't important to me. Why do they have to be important to you?
Right.
You know, like the
Right.
superficial things. I always sends me down a spiral when people are just making money to buy the next boat or the next house to keep up with the Joneses, not because it's a passion, you know, because I've always been a passionate person and
Right.
I've put my energies into where my passion is, but I've found that society is not really necessarily that way or set up to reward that way of thinking. It's set up to reward obedience and right. Our college system
Absolutely.
used to be a great place for the greatest minds of our society to get together and solve the problems. But now it's just a puppy mill of churning people out to go into corporate.
Yeah, and it's just a society gets to make a decision who's in and who's out. Okay, and I think a very little time, and I think we may even be getting better about this now, but people that don't march to beat the drum of whatever society expects of them, I think it's kind of okay to be quirkier now.
Definitely the stigma is
Right.
is a lot lower than
Right.
it was in the 80s and 90s, certainly, yeah.
So
Let your freak flag fly kind of a thing. Yeah.
So maybe that'll be a future light that people will be a little bit different, and that's okay.
Yeah.
And then, of course, we're going to talk about that later on as we go. But you know, people that suffer from really difficult things. Okay, that literally, if you hadn't ever done that, you got no idea what you're talking about. You really,
Sure. That's with anything in life.
right?
Yeah.
Just be thankful that you didn't have to do it, but don't be judgmental.
Right.
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 So.
Yeah, I think the thing that is irreconcilable between youth and people who have had some life experience is you can be intelligent and young, but wisdom is kind of acquired knowledge and experience, right? you can't really be young and wise. And you could go through some traumatic things, and
Yeah, you got. I'll agree with you. Time has a
time
way of teaching you
tempers
things.
even the things you learn and how to appropriately assemble them into your toolbox
Yeah.
and how you navigate through life. I know when I was in my teenage years, I thought I knew more than anybody on the planet.
Yeah, I did
I had
too.
it all figured out, right?
I did too.
And now I'm seeing, my kids kind of thinking that way too. They got it all figured out, But you can't take that shortcut and bring your experience to that. Everybody's got to learn that on their
Yeah.
own.
Yeah.
And
that is so. If you think about it, wide ranging, just because of the different things you're going to encounter in your life, and a lot of those you've encountered those in your life, and you said, "I will never do that again."
Yep.
Okay, there's a moment of wisdom. You didn't need to do that again. You go, "That's it." Okay.
Right.
Well, I mean, even like we know that the brain, they say that a male brain's like 23 or 24 years old before it matures now. So if you see some 21-year-old acting like an idiot, like he's 15, you can go, well, he don't really have a whole lot he's dealing with there.
No, that's absolutely true. I think they say 25 is when it fully forms in males, and I don't know what the number for females is, but it's not too far off. Which makes you wonder, I kind of set the new number at 40. So until you're 40, I don't want to have, might have some shared experiences here and there, but, at 40, you've got, I'm just talking statistically, not everybody, but people mostly have a home they're living in by that point that they're either paying on or have built, or they have a family that they're trying to raise.
Right.
You're in a mentor position, in some space in your life where you don't have any kids, you're inherently selfish all the time until you have something to take care of. And being in a position to where you're trying to raise kids, you hopefully would have enough perspective to want them to avoid the mistakes you made.
Yeah, you
right?
would. But...
You would. And then also identify why you made those mistakes. What was going on in my life at that time? How can I avoid those pitfalls for my kids? And try and raise good, kind-hearted people that are critical thinking. To me is really important, and I think it's kind of dead, and I don't think they teach that in school anymore either. I had the benefit of being in some GT classes and stuff like that where we did different kinds of brain games, and anybody can do that for themselves. But how do you feel like critical thinking fits into our society now?
I'm
if
hard,
at all.
I'm hard on social media, and I hate to be that way, but I think that has become our venue for critical thinking, is what the other guy says. Right? And what I'm finding is, and I'm not going to say nobody, because obviously my son, there's people that drill, okay? But if you're going to take what you just saw on Facebook or whatever and not vet that in any way.
Right.
Okay. First off, you're going to find out that a lot of what you're reviewing is a Russian bot spewing it out to both sides to keep everybody mad at each other.
Sure, that's a huge thing.
It's a big deal. It's a big deal.
Yeah.
And so when you look at this stuff, it's like so much of it's just anger and rage at each other that really I don't know. I don't see that between people when they're sitting around, a campfire or going to a race.
No.
Okay. That
you don't.
You're not going to zing somebody with that stuff when you're sitting in front of them.
No.
But critical thinking of just going in there and getting, just going in and doing searches. I mean, you can find good information. I read a lot, and that's one way that I try to stay on top of at least some things.
What do you mostly read?
I read a lot of news, but I try to do that within the confines of some kind of normalcy. I have been, and I'm no longer a fringe guy. Okay, I want to kind of get in the middle, and I want to see what this side says and this side says, because a lot of times they're saying the same thing.
Right.
It's amazing to me that it turns into this terrible thing when it's like, listen, I just heard you say this and you say this. That's awful familiar. You think you guys could sit down and work this out? You
Yeah,
know?
politics is really tough from trying to be in the middle stance
Mm-hmm.
because both sides, you piss off both sides
Oh, yeah.
very easily.
Yeah.
And I've always refused to pick a tribe
Yeah.
because I feel like it's gotten to the point where if you're going to be in this tribe, you have to believe in every single thing we
Everything.
say,
Right.
or you can get the hell out.
Right.
Well, the other person told me the same thing, so I guess I'm out
I'm
here in
out.
the cold.
Yep. Yep.
You know, I agree with some of what you say and some of what you say, but I have to take it all
Yeah.
whole Nelson or I get nothing.
Yeah.
And that's a tough place to exist.
Yeah, and I think that, look, we were talking about new technologies. This is really new technology. And the fact is that 20 years from now, I think they'll look back on this period and go, what the heck were we doing? We had an algorithm running our lives.
Do you believe that?
Mhm.
I hope you're right
Mm-hmm.
because we do have an algorithm that is pushing both negative and positive to reaffirm or to make you angry, to get you to engage.
Get us doing this.
Yes.
Yet, if you go
Outside forces.
virtually anywhere you go to, I don't care where you're out on the side of the road and your truck broke down, and the guy that pulls you over, his politics don't matter. He's just coming by to help you out. And I have found that this country is filled with just fantastic people.
Oh, they are.
Okay? Why don't we focus on the fact that that's the truth? We don't have to fight.
Yeah.
You got your way you want to run it. I got my way I want to
Yeah.
run it. But the fact is the chips are down. I know I can depend on you.
Yeah.
Right? And that's what this country is all about anyway.
I got into a conversation with a lady at work yesterday about the Confederate flag. I don't remember how it had come up, but the comment had been made that, you know, when they see a Confederate flag, they saw a hateful, possibly dangerous individual. And so that's very different than the experience I've had in the South. When I see a Confederate flag, my grandfather was an uneducated man. He had a Confederate flag in the house because he had family that fought in the Civil War. To him, it was the flag of the South, of Southern living, of hospitality, of it had nothing to do with racism. It had nothing to do with any of that. And so I said, if I see somebody, if I'm broke down the side of the road and I see somebody with a Confederate flag, it's a good old Southern boy who's probably got the tools that's going to help me
He's not
out.
coming by with a gun to shoot you.
No. He's going to be somebody I would trust out in the middle of the woods in the darkness, which is a completely different experience than this other person. And I said, well, of the two of us, I know 40, 50 of these people. How many do you know? Well, zero.
Right.
Right? So who
Right.
what are you going to trust? The media or somebody that really knows these kind of people?
And everybody builds it up. But here's the thing. I mean, it really, once again, I'm big on liberty.
Sure.
And if you want to fly that fact, that can mean the most hateful thing in the world to me. But you have to back up on your rights as an American and go, that's terrible. I don't want to. But you're an American. You have a right to do that.
Well, I appreciate you fighting just for the right for liberty. I
Because
love that.
that's all it is.
Neither side appreciates that to me anymore.
I don't think this is where I'm at. I don't think it's possible with the money, greed, and power in politics right now. I don't think it's possible until for us to live together until we finally go, we can't manage each other.
No.
Okay, and so let's don't try to put a boatload of laws on here that my side wants, and then get the next president and do it. Don't do that, man.
Absolutely.
Just leave us alone.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know.
Now I have the I'm not going to put a Confederate flag on my car and drive it in public because I understand that does offend some people. But to me, that is not what that flag means. That was not the way I was raised for it to mean.
But see, that's the other thing.
But I can understand.
You're also then
self-aware.
Saying, I have people out here that's offensive to.
Sure.
So I'm not going to do that.
Right.
Okay.
Out of respect.
Respect.
Right.
Which is what's missing here.
Well, sure.
Right? I mean, when it came down to, look, man, you got your way, I got my way. We're 99% the same. And what we disagree on is really not worth fighting over. Listen, everything that's happening right now we get spiritual. Everything that's happening right now is going to be in a dustbin of history in another 20 years, 30 years.
Well, that gives me some hope, and I wanted to come back to what you said. So You don't think we're in any imminent danger of any kind of civil war in this country?
I don't think so, and I'll tell you why.
Yeah.
I think it's very possible you could see clashes between very radical people.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't see that they're going to come rolling up my yard and go, I saw you have a Harris sign, I'm going to shoot you.
Like if Antifa and the Proud Boys are at the same spot, you could see
You're going to see
heated.
some of that stuff.
But the average American...
They don't want to do that. They got their
yeah.
neighbors. These are people they like. And they'll make fun of each other. They'll go, well, our liberal friend over here or whatever.
Sure.
But when the chips are down, does he want to hurt you? No.
Yeah.
And that's where I'm at on it. I think you're going to see some violence here.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's going to be widespread. And I don't think we're ever going to line this country up and go, well, here's your country, here's my country, let's start shooting each other.
Yeah, you don't have those geographic lines like you used to.
No.
It's doesn't mean it still couldn't happen in a perfect scenario. But yeah, you're right. And I think there are more people that want to get along than aren't. But again, it always comes back to me to tribalism.
Mm-hmm.
We're so advanced, yet we're still just a tribal.
Yeah.
It goes back to as savage as we always were.
Agree.
Even in sports.
Yeah.
I like the Razorbacks or,
right.
LSU. Whatever it is, it's so... Why do you like that team? It's because it's localized to your
my
area.
Tribe. Yeah.
You can't tell me you keep up with every play. You know what I mean? Like, I used to follow the Broncos, and year after year, heartache. I was like, why am I following these guys 20 years after Elway left? Yeah. I used to watch him because of Elway, and he's been gone 20 years. And I had to realize, like, I'm just doing this because
you're doing
of tribal.
Yeah.
No other reason.
I used to get really upset about Razorback games, and then I figured out, it's like, dude, there's not a thing you're doing here that's going to affect anything except your own health.
Nothing.
You're not going to make a decision for that team.
Football doesn't matter in the scheme of things
it's
anyway.
Like in big scheme of things, doesn't matter.
Not at all.
Right.
But I'd get so upset about it as a kid if the Broncos lost. It ruined my weekend. Yeah. What a stupid way to think, you know? But it took me seeing and going through time and realizing, this is a business and, and I still love the game. Yeah. I love the sport. I love the absolute pinnacle of physical gladiators basically playing chess. Yeah. It's a unique game.
Yeah, yeah. I like football. I know you played, right?
I did, and I coached my son this year.
Oh, he's playing. Oh, cool.
Yeah, he played left corner. Yeah. And we just had our last game last Saturday, so
good.
It was very rewarding, but glad to get some time back at the same time.
It's a big time soak.
Well, he's wanting to jam, you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
He's wanting to play music, and I was like, son, I can't have you in football and getting all my attention with the band. I got two other boys.
We got to do something here, right?
So let's put the music off till after football, and then we'll focus on that. So now we're after football, so he's ready to play drums.
Yeah, yeah.
Which is totally cool.
That's awesome.
It's cool living with your drummer, man.
Yeah.
You can just roll in here and fire it up whenever. Yeah. And we're, I don't know if I've told you this, but we're working on new Durham songs, and these are the songs I wrote when Julia was pregnant with him.
Oh wow.
That's how far behind we are.
But that's cool.
No, it is cool.
That's
I remember, her being pregnant. Max was our only child at the time, and I was writing these songs during the pregnancy, and I remember most of the songs I write, or at least where I was when I wrote them, and it's kind of a veiled metaphor for where it's, instead of writing a journal, songwriting for me is kind of putting that mental state on the paper, and
of a point in time,
of what that emotion was at that point in time, and I can go back and listen to a song, and back then, of course, that was before I had a podcast. I was much more veiled and secret. I wanted to really make it to where it had to be interpreted, and therefore could have multiple different interpretations.
Right, so you can't pin you down on it.
But I would know.
You know what it was.
Right? As I've gotten older, I'm a little more... It's a little more easy for me to be vulnerable and actually put some things in real words. Right. Which is a new kind of lyrical style.
Which, of course, is that's the evolution of a songwriter right there. you...
Yeah, sure.
You can do that, because that's one of the most difficult things to do, to have a song that people can connect with because you're actually feeling like you do at that moment. Then you get that great music,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, songwriting's something that Do you ever write?
Mhm.
What's
Yeah.
your process like?
Uh,
Because you play a number of things, don't you?
I don't just play guitar.
Just
I
guitar?
hack on the guitar. Let me just say that. Okay, I'm no wonderful guitar player. I'm a folk kind of guitar player.
But
that
you can jam.
play my cowboy chords. And I have over the years written songs. One of the problems I've got, I never get them good enough for me. There's always something I'm trying to turn in there. I never turn the switch. I started writing again within the last couple of years, and I'd
Good.
done it earlier. And the reason I did was, this was my thinking. Probably no one's ever going to hear these, but they're counseling. They're for me to sit down and write them. It's a place where I'm getting to put on my page.
Yeah, certainly.
Right? And I like story songs. I like funny songs. And I like
Yeah.
things like that. But getting something good enough, I have a problem with. I've always have. And I never just get to that place. And then I hit these gaps like I got all our friends coming in. And I wanted to have 2 or 3 of mine ready to play. And I hadn't played in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's just like, I don't know what happened. I've got opportunity. I just didn't do it.
Yeah.
And so.
Is that out of fear? Or
No, I just think I get busy. I have a one-track mind. I get
Yeah.
busy on stuff, you know, and I'm
Yeah.
just like, but the process for me is what I started doing was free writing, just sitting down and just writing in the morning for 10 minutes, just whatever came. to
Without a
mind.
guitar, just
Without a
writing.
guitar, just free
Okay,
writing.
yeah.
Okay, and that sometimes
Stream
will
of
yield
consciousness
something.
kind of
Mhm.
stuff, just
Yep.
right off the top of your head.
Yep.
Okay.
Sometimes it'll yield something. Sometimes it won't.
Sure.
But
I've done those exercises.
it is if you're while you're doing that, if you're like putting some metaphor and working through those types of words, then you sometimes will get, you know, a hook or something like that.
Oh,
out of
yeah.
that, you know. So
Definitely can.
it's interesting if I get on one thing. I mean, I got on a big one about, you know, the uselessness of war, and I probably spent a week and a half doing that. Well, I go back and look at it, I'm like, there's 15 songs there,
Yeah.
right? But there's also all these pieces that could be connected to make one good one. But it's just a matter of getting it out of your head and getting on the page, because I don't sit down and write to make it's hard. The hard part to me is I have a hard time with melody. I've always been able to write decent lyrics or poetry or whatever.
Okay.
So what I sometimes struggle with is my stuff starts sounding the same,
Yeah.
right? And those kinds of things. But I've got a song that I need to go. I'll practice it this week while I'm out there. But I got a song I'm gonna do for Rick, because he's the inspiration.
Really?
Yeah, yeah.
Tell me about this.
Okay, so one day we were at the shop, and he just got some new boots in, you know, and he's like, you know, that's probably the last pair of boots I'm gonna buy right there. Okay, like that's all I'm ever gonna need.
Yeah.
And I just busted up laughing. Well, if you say that in front of Paula, she's just like, no way, man, you're gonna have more boots than that, right?
Yeah.
So I went down and ordered a set, and they were like, the ones I went for, and what I finally ended up with was like $200 more.
Yeah.
And so I just told Rick, I said, well, you know, I don't mind spending the money, because it's probably going to be the last pair of boots I'm ever going to buy. So I wrote this song about it. It's from a cowboy's perspective, but
that's
it's
fun.
about the last pair of boots that I'll ever buy.
That's
I need
great.
I need to get that one going, but I want to play that for Rick. He was the he officially got the hook on
We
that
should do a studio version of that.
one. Man, you would hate
block
to
you
hear
out.
me singing.
Probably would, but that doesn't mean I wouldn't do it for you.
Well, you know,
That's cool, man. I can't wait to hear it. A lot of, what was it? My buddy Matt Mahan was out here last week. He was a junior high coach, a basketball team, and he was talking about demonstrated success.
Mhm.
And that can apply to anything, including songwriting.
Mhm.
You know, if you approach a song this way and you have success, well, I know I can do it that way.
Mhm.
But for me, I always hated writing the song the same way twice.
Mhm.
So it was like, how can I try and write
Move it.
in this way or in this way?
Mhm.
And then after, 1,500 something songs, you kind of start getting a little lazy,
right,
maybe, and start trying to fall into formulas.
right.
But one thing for me is with you talked about having struggle with melodies. My only requirement is it can't sound familiar. If it sounds familiar, then I'm already, because that eliminates that kind of falling into that trap of. And a lot of times it'll sound familiar, but I can't place it, and I'll chase it. And where does this come from? And and if I can't find it, then I'll take it. But everything's been done at this point. Every combination of.
Bob Dylan said, "Hey, do we really need any more songs?"
Right? I mean, do we really? But every now and then, a good song or a good songwriting session can get me through a night, man. And I'll just obsess on it and just nail out the lyrics if I'm really in the zone. When you got a good one, because you just can't let it off the line. You just want to.
Well, I've never actually done. I've been overhauling the loft above my bedroom, my house, and one of the things I was going to do, I have done, is I was going to set up a little place to play up there over the top of that. Well, I've got a little Scarlett interface now, and GarageBand. I mean, I've got everything else on the computer, but I think GarageBand. So I'm really looking forward to actually working with some of that kind of stuff.
I hope you will, man.
And seeing, I mean, now I could bury up in that, and I would just,
Oh, I hope you will.
I
really do.
Yeah.
Have you ever done anything like that before?
Never.
See, just focus on it, like doing an EP, 5-6 songs, man, and just do it.
Yeah.
Just get it out.
Yep.
Good or bad.
Right.
This is the work, and just, man, I'm telling you, it's worth it.
Yeah.
I've got songs that I did an album. I think the first full album I did, I was probably 15, and my dad's keyboard player at the time, Lynn Gann, he was a master at the home studio. He came out and produced us, and we recorded it live in my parents' old house on Rays Mill Road. And once I kind of watched him doing what he was doing, and that was really before computers even. I think we did that on like I don't remember what they were called. It looked like a floppy disk on steroids. It was a big fat floppy disk. Probably had maybe 100 megabytes on it. I mean, now you're talking about gigs, but it really made me fascinated. So I went back and recorded. I got a program called Cakewalk back in '97 or so, and I started. And by this point, I'd been writing and recording for 2 or 3 years. But I did an album by myself, and I went back and recorded the first 13 songs I wrote, just out of posterity, just because they were the first ones. They're not good.
Well,
but I
you needed
just
to put them
wanted to get these down because they were the first 13. There's a couple interesting songs on there, but I still have it as just kind of that collection of those tunes, and I'm glad I have that, because otherwise they'd have just been lost to memory.
They just go away. I mean,
even though I was a better songwriter
like
when
me,
I recorded
I got files and stuff I've written out, but it's like, the truth of the matter is that nothing's been finished. Nothing has come to that point where you go, that's good enough.
Yeah, and I know what you're talking about, because every single beat, there's an unlimited amount of possibilities from here on.
Yep.
So how are you going to nail down?
And to me, it's a lot of time. How did that sound? If it sound rushed, did it sound?
Yeah.
Then you start tweaking lines, beats.
Yeah.
To get that in there, and that's a lot of work. Anyway, I mean,
you
hadn't ever done that before, but if you have, when you're sitting there getting everything on the beat, it's.
Yeah, that's why I love playing with drummers specifically so much, because everything I have up to the point where I play with a drummer is what I call a sketch. So I'll write the verse, the melody, the chorus, and I'll have it all up here. But until I get it with a drummer, and to feel what that dynamic feels like, changing over from the chorus into the bridge or whatever it is, you can't really feel it until you play with it. So that's what's been so fun about playing with Walter, is I can say, hey, we had all these songs, but we just never did have the time to play them live. So what do they sound like with drums?
Right.
And so, yep, that's exactly what I thought it would sound like. That, that's not quite lining up with what I was thinking. How can we fix that? And for him, being a young drummer, kind of working with songwriting, which a lot of drummers don't get to do, it's kind of neat for him to see, how can we change, how can we make this cool? You know, we did this on the, you know, and just like a songwriter, don't play the same beat on all three parts of the songs. Do something different on everything just to change it up, you know. Really, you don't need to go any farther than Beatles or Zeppelin. If you had to stop at two bands, those two have everything you need. Every tool in the box.
Yep.
Like, just, you could stop right there if you wanted to. And that's what I always go back to.
Right.
I mean, John Bonham was just, he was a basic 4/4 drummer when he had to be. But, and I mean, we didn't have all this progressive metal that we have now. I mean, it was pretty simple times. But he was doing things on the drums that people hadn't done before.
Right.
You know.
He was inventing new. And then that gets into just the language of the music. And
then people are trying to top him, and it gets out there.
Disseminated.
Yeah, and then everybody's trying to one-up each other. And, I mean, Jimmy Page's one of the greatest guitar players of all time. Then, you know, you fast forward 20 years, you got guys like Zakk Wylde, who are 10 times as fast. And he's written some great stuff, too. But for me, the Beatles and Zeppelin just really anchored down. What are your, like, core flag in the sand, your bands?
Oh, man. See, if you're asking what's popular with me.
What you love.
When I was a kid, I mean, you know, of course I lived in Louisiana, so Southern rock was like coming and huge. I really like Leonard Skinner and the Allman Brothers and all that stuff. But I also have a dose of blues. I love blues, and it's particularly Delta blues. And so that runs through me too. And then the other side of it is I just, when the rock and roll thing kind of died out and everybody went country, I did too. And I love country music, you know.
Do you?
I like that good old solid beat and all that.
So you're talking about country music there.
Yeah. So, you know, in the 80s, there was kind of a country movement, and it connected, like, if you look even in the 70s, you started looking at the outlaw type guys, you know, and that started
Who
building
would you
into
consider outlaw kind of guys?
Well, you know, I'd put Waylon Jennings in there, and Willie, and those were the first guys to kind of take control of their own production.
Yeah.
But you know, and then there were just tons of great songwriters. You ever listen to Billy Joe Shaver?
No.
Okay. Well, like he, here's my brain again. Anyway.
You're not any worse than I am, though.
Oh, man.
It sucks.
It's frustrating.
Yeah.
I just said his name.
Wait.
Waylon. Yeah, Waylon cut a whole album of his songs. Billy Joe's just a rough old guy, Texas guy, and he can turn a lyric, I'm telling you.
Yeah.
But it's all around that country beat. I like bluegrass and folk, and I like that kind of stuff. So if I'm writing, in my mind, what I'm hearing usually sounds more out of that.
Really?
Yeah, I don't really, rock kind of stuff never is in my mind.
See, I stereotyped you as a Grateful Dead guy.
No. You know, I appreciate what they did, but I wasn't ever a big Deadhead.
Yeah,
but
me
no,
neither.
It's just like just that good old solid country, you know, and
I also never really got into country much, other than, you know, Garth Brooks kind of stuff, you know, because he was more of a rock and roll.
Yeah, he's more edgy.
Yeah, but I got into Hank 3 pretty hard, and talking about some outlaw country, he has got some really good outlaw country. But that kind of sent me down the rabbit hole, listening to his dad, some of that stuff like that. But I definitely like heavier dynamics, like metal. I'm a big metal fan. I love dynamic shifts in music, where you can take it, and Zeppelin's a great example of this, where you can take it to a really quiet, soft space, and then build it up and just crescendo, you know, like a Free Bird is Stairway to Heaven, you know, those are kind of microcosms within rock music. But you know, you don't have to take 12 minutes to do that. You can do anything you really need in 4 minutes in a song. And you know, you've had record label involvement and fucking around with artists and stuff. You know, if you just let an artist write and do their thing, you know, I wonder where music would be now.
Yeah, I mean, and if you think about it, of course, it's ruined in some perspectives, but you are able to get some. You don't have to go through the payola system to get played.
Exactly. we're in a whole new world now
Yeah,
with music. You
yeah.
can do it at home.
Right. You do it at home. You throw it out there. You're gonna make if you put it on Spotify, you make your 27 cents a month, and
Sure.
it's all great.
Well, Mike Portnoy, the drummer for Dream Theater, said in the 90s there were thousands of bands making millions of dollars, and now there's millions of bands making thousands of dollars.
That's right. It's true.
You know, that label involvement, but they would also try and put, you know, when Kurt Cobain died, they wanted the new Nirvana. So you're going to sound like Nirvana now, right?
Right.
And you're going to push whatever sound it is. And
Make that sound. What
Right.
they did. Go do it.
Right. So how much
Well, you're here
are you
different.
the writer versus what the label's
Yeah.
telling you what to write?
You know, and I think even writers, in some respects, I think that country's a little bit more pure on this because there's tons of good writers and they're all competing for a slot on somebody's that just need a slot on an album.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
So sometimes they'll write for that artist or whatever. But, you know, that's a one in a bazillion hit too. I mean, you know, that's not gonna. Most of the people that I see that are saying they're making any money at songwriting are doing film scores or doing that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So I've never thought of it as a money making deal anyway, but it really is interesting to watch how it's marketed from the songwriter
Yeah.
to the
To the
artist.
finished product.
Yeah.
Who
And
it's
you know,
come
it's
out to.
amazing to me is how they team write songs in Nashville. If
Yeah.
you get in deep enough where you can get into like two really good songwriters, and you get to sit down with them, you get to write music, you have a pretty good chance that that's going to make it on somebody's album.
Sure.
Right. But it's
Sure.
amazing how they do it. They're
But
not.
then it's
solitary.
also songwriting by committee.
It is. It's
And
songwriting
that-
by committee.
And that always has
It's
just,
like, I mean, the thing drives me insane about all this stuff. And I don't listen to the new country; it just makes me nuts. But there's some good songs out there. Some good.
sure,
awesome.
always are good songs.
But you know, it got to where everything I heard on the radio had to include the word "girl" or "tailgate."
yeah.
If you didn't stick "tailgate"
Yeah.
in that song somewhere,
That's a
sitting in your
relatively recent,
pickup truck under the stars thing. I mean, it just got to be, here's my three things I've got to hit
Yep.
in the song. You know, I can make it sound like, you know,
I'm with you.
and
You notice trends.
yeah,
that
well,
go
and that's
through
what they
and-
want.
Yeah,
You know,
that's absolutely what they want. So the Southern lifestyle is easy to market to.
Mhm.
You know, tailgating, beer,
Yeah.
you got your girl,
pretty much it.
you know, whatever. Rock was a little more esoteric. I mean, it was, you know, the Kurt Cobain was very feeling sorry for yourself and, you know, woe is me kind of shit.
And I mean, rock's always been a really segmented, if you think about it, just because that there were so many different types of bands. Man,
Yeah.
if you like go back and listen to like a American Top 40 from 1971 or two,
Oh,
there'll be 40 songs on there, and every one of them will be completely different.
all over the place.
All over the place. You got
So much-
crooners, you got
Yeah.
rock bands, you got. It was weird.
Oh, it was wild. 50s, 60s, and 70s,
Yeah.
really.
Mhm.
To me, I didn't start seeing the homogeneity until like the 80s. But
Well, they
then
say
that's
it-
when you kind of separated into soft rock, and you had more different
Right.
types of stations. But like you said, the rock station itself, you'd have a crooner.
Your
And then
top
Black
40 could have
Sabbath.
Barry Manilow. And
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, you know,
yeah, it was.
and
all
it was
over the place.
amazing.
But it was great. Yeah.
You know, great songs that made it through that problem. I was just thinking about one time, and they used to have this video. I don't think it's out. You can find it now, but it was John Denver won for "Take Me Home, Country Roads." He won the Country Music Award for Song of the Year.
Okay.
Okay, so Charlie Rich is like one of the old time country guys.
Yeah.
So he's giving the award away, right? He's like, okay, and the winner is, and he's trashed. He opens it up, pulls out the card, and he goes, John Denver, take me home, country roads. And he reaches in his little vest, he gets a lighter, and goes, and sets it on fire.
No shit.
Yeah, he
dude.
did it, man.
That's wild.
Yeah, but I mean, they couldn't take it. A bunch of hippies come in doing these country songs, you know, and things like that. And that all really straightened out because figure at the time that Willie Nelson and those guys came along, well, look, all bets are off the table. It could be anything at that point,
Yeah.
you know.
But what a cool time. I mean, I wasn't born until 81,
Mhm.
so I didn't get to see in real life a lot of that
Yeah.
rock and you take the 1950s when it had really been a lot of that doo-wop
Mm-hmm.
kind of clean stuff, and you had Elvis injected into that,
Mm-hmm.
and kind of what Elvis did to the music scene, which set the stage for the Beatles,
Right.
you know, which obviously then you had Zeppelin and from then on, but it happened so fast.
Yeah, and
it
all
seems
those
like.
British guys, they were rocking along. I think they called it skiffle. It was basically kind of a folk, real
Yeah.
fast folk dance type
Yep,
thing.
yep.
And Elvis Presley basically was the first guy to start busting out, that was white, busting out Delta songs.
Yeah.
Johnny Cash, Carl Perkins, the Million Dollar
Yeah.
Band, all those guys. Well, when those guys would go over to Europe to play, okay, this was stuff that they weren't really used to over there. So
Yeah.
what's really interesting is, like, watch the Rolling Stones, for instance, and they're introducing Howlin' Wolf at one
Yeah.
of their things over there,
Yeah.
okay, because they went over and found these cats and they're going like, teach us, because that's what formed that music up.
Yeah.
Led Zeppelin, When
Yeah.
the Levee Breaks.
Oh,
right?
absolutely.
So if you think about it, deeply formative, the blues, the Delta blues,
Yeah.
that then became Detroit and Chicago
Mhm.
and Memphis and those sorts of things. But those were
Even the Doors music, which is so heavily, keyboard,
Synth.
was all blues based
Oh, yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
progressions. Jim Morrison was a great blues singer,
Yeah.
in my opinion.
yeah. He was a strange cat, but he made some pretty good music.
Yeah, he always fascinated me growing up. I don't know if you ever saw the Oliver Stone movie
Oh, yeah, I did. I can't remember it, but I
with
saw it.
Val Kilmer plays
Yep.
Jim Morrison. Yeah, he really encapsulates it in a couple hours, kind of what that might have been like. It's always hard to go back, but
Right.
that's a really cool movie. But yeah, Jim Morrison, Creedence Clearwater, man. I don't think anybody did Southern rock better.
Oh, yeah.
I remember I don't know how old I was, but I always thought they were from Louisiana growing
Yeah,
up. Because they sang,
yes.
Born on the Bayou, they're
Yeah.
singing Southern music.
Right.
These dudes are from California,
Right.
and it's like, whoa, how'd they get that sound?
They got that swampy sound.
They got
you
that
know?
swampy sound. It wasn't like Skinner, who's from Jacksonville.
Right.
They're from the deep swamp.
And that boogie,
Yeah.
that's a whole nother side of
Yeah.
it.
But then you had the Haight Ashbury and the
Oh,
San
God.
Francisco.
There was a time that music was just on fire.
It was just
Man.
so
Maybe
eclectic.
it was experimental. Maybe that's what it
probably
was.
a lot of drugs
Yeah.
and
If you think about Willie Nelson doing those camp out things where people would come for 3 days and hear 10 bands, but they would all be different
Yeah.
types of people.
yeah.
And everybody's out there drinking beer and having a good time. And all these guys started stretching
Yeah.
what it was, because, like, if you think about it, man, if you listen to country music in the 70s, you're just straight on redneck. I mean, that's
Yeah.
just what it was.
Yeah.
Okay. And the lyrics sound like that.
Yeah.
So those things started morphing, and they had some respect for those old songs.
Yeah.
Well, they were playing them a little bit differently, and of course, when you see those guys walk in with their long hair, which they didn't have back, that was kind of a thing they started when
Right.
they got this outlaw
Yes.
thing, and so, I think it just blew up. Los Angeles. I'm reading a book right now about Leon Russell.
Yeah.
Okay. And what's fascinating about Leon Russell was he was a heck of a studio musician.
Yeah.
Living in L.A. And he played on like every song you can imagine.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then became famous in his own right.
Mm-hmm.
But what he was basically taking really what you call Southern gospel. He had a gospel sound to a lot of what
Yeah.
he did. When he did his live shows.
Yeah.
But he's a fascinating guy. But if you just read the tours and things and the people he was playing with, you're going like, good Lord. That was a rich time in music,
Yeah.
Oh,
absolutely it was. How old were you when Woodstock happened?
Woodstock, what was the year on that?
69.
69, I'd have been 10.
Did you hear anything about it?
Oh, just
at
what
that
was on
age?
the news. I mean, they show them thing, them women running around out there with no
Yeah.
clothes on and everything, and I'm 10, so,
I just wonder if that was the cultural nexus we've come to believe it to be. I mean, it seemed Like it was supposed to be just a small concert and some dude's field, and like people from all over the world came out there for a week or whatever, and it just.
But you look at the lineup, you're going like, really, you should have expected more people.
Well, I don't think the lineup was set at the beginning. I think once these bands found out about it, then they started saying, we got to get in on this.
So the way I understand this is Summer of Love, and the bookend of that then is that Altamont Speedway. Okay.
Yeah.
So it blew apart.
Yeah.
Right.
Pretty much.
And so that was a brief.
Oh, yeah.
Really brief thing.
Yeah, for sure. But just, I don't know if it was... you obviously had people like Hendrix and the Beatles were doing LSD and marijuana and really trying to expand consciousness. And sometimes it works for music, sometimes it doesn't. It's like with anything else. But, now you're hearing stuff about DMT and things that can possibly throw your consciousness into another dimension. What we talked a little bit about it before. What are your thoughts on that kind of stuff?
I do see how creatively it could open up some new venues for you. What I never could understand about those guys is how they could be that trashed and play.
It's muscle memory.
It's muscle memory, but there were a lot of really bad concerts too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
there were.
Yeah. So I don't know, man. It's if it's on an album, that's what you're listening to. But if you paid your bucks to go down and see fill in the blank, you could get some bad shows.
No, absolutely true. There weren't the standards that you have today. I mean, somebody gets trashed on stage now, their career's over.
Yeah.
But like back in the '60s, that was
Jim
Morrison notorious for Janis Joplin. I mean, Hendrix, you had those kind of people, but. I don't know that they were doing drugs for the same reasons people are doing drugs now. I felt like they were trying to find something new. Like they were on a journey, not so much trying to suppress trauma and grief and get through a day. Yeah. It was more of like a trailblazing kind of a thing.
So opium would have been that. It would have been and that's whatever I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
But LSD, if you think about it, really... There were some experiments on it, but it didn't really catch on into the 60s. So when they started taking LSD, then you kind of had that whole thing kind of developed out of that. I don't think they knew what to do with it. I mean, to understand that it could jack you up, that that all these things are possible. It's just like, wow, this is what we do.
Yeah.
And so drugs have always been a part of music,
art in general,
art in general, But I think that now, at least, I think that people have an understanding that you can barbecue yourself.
Yes.
You can tear stuff up here that won't come back.
No, we've lost a lot of good people.
Yeah, and think about just the number of people that died.
Yeah, it's pretty tragic. Kurt's death was really powerful to me because I had just started writing songs. So he died in April of '94, so I was 13.
Oh, really?
And so I had just started writing, really started taking it seriously, and he was one of the guys that, I was like, man, you can just play 4 simple chords but put the right melody over them in a way that nobody's really done it before. And I wonder sometimes, as somebody who suffers with bipolar disorder and as a songwriter, did he know that he was done, that he was going to end up as being a formulaic and he could never top what he had done?
I could imagine that would.
I think that was a part of it.
I mean, if you were ill and you go, I'm going to have to do this the rest of my life. Now, I heard Ray Parker Jr. that wrote that Ghostbusters song talking on these, and he goes, do you ever get tired of playing that? He goes, are you kidding? It's like, I'll play that every day because that's how I've made my living for 30 years, But now, if you're creative, what would that be? It'd be like,
I don't know, man. I've toured some, but not extensively. Where I'm playing the same songs every night of the week. I don't know. That's one of those things that always pissed me off about Robert Plant. Was that it was like, oh, that was a chapter of my life that I'm done with.
Yeah.
Well, that's also the chapter that made you rich enough to do whatever
Right.
the fuck you
Right,
want to do.
right.
So maybe throw a bone to,
Yeah.
you don't have to be in Zeppelin, I get it, but for a long time, he wouldn't cover any Zeppelin stuff. And then when he did, it would be like some
Careful.
off-the-wall arrangement that was so different than...
I went to see Todd Rundgren over to Kane's. You know, and he's
Yeah.
got 3 or 4 songs that were really big.
Yeah, he
okay.
did.
And so he played, and I get it. It's been a number of years. He played all the new kind of stuff that he has now,
Yeah.
which is different.
Yeah.
And then he doesn't play any of them, right? And so this whole crowd is like 60, 70 years old, right?
Yeah.
He plays all this stuff, and it was phenomenal. What they did was amazing.
Sure.
But so he goes out. He comes back for his last set there, his last few songs, encore, and he plays every song. I'm talking about, like "Can't We Still Be Friends"? You know that song?
Yeah.
He plays it double time. He just blazes through them and walks off the stage. I'm like, dude, these guys came to hear you do 2 or 3 songs, man.
Yeah.
You know, they paid money to get here. Kind of like you're talking about Robert Plant. It's just like, I don't value this anymore. You know.
Yeah, there's a relationship that gets established between an artist and
Sure.
their fans.
Well, everybody's got what has happening in life around a song
Yeah.
that instantly
Well, sure.
is there. You know, I mean, it's kind of a soundtrack for you.
I had a hard time with covers for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
When I first started playing music in Fayetteville in the mid '90s, you could do all originals.
Mm-hmm.
They'd book you.
Mm-hmm.
And then into the early 2000s, then it was they wanted more covers,
Mm-hmm.
and then it kind of became, you just hardly didn't do original music at all.
Right.
And I kind of settled on, we'll do 50-50,
Right.
But that to me was like, I'm interested in doing my own stuff. I don't want to really go back and rehash these
Right.
old songs that somebody's already done better than we could do it. But as I got older, as my kids are learning songs, I would say, "Oh, that's a cover of so and so, or
Mhm.
that's a cover of this," and we go back and listen to the original. And it kind of made me look at covers in a different way. In that, if you can introduce a really cool song to a whole new audience that wouldn't otherwise have seen it, then that's kind of a cool thing.
Yeah.
And so introducing, kids aren't listening to Black Sabbath
Right.
anymore. But if you cover Sweet Leaf or something in a cool way that could resonate with kids, then
Yeah.
you're...
So you take some of these songs, that have been cut 30, 40 times.
Sure.
And everybody's doing it different.
Yeah, a little bit.
So the song becomes a standard.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then how they cut it is what appeals to them as a band or what they
Yep.
want to have.
Absolutely.
And it's amazing that you keep hearing these really great songs redone in new, crazy ways that sound so cool.
Some songs, but then you've also got your Freebirds.
Yeah.
Could you imagine a cover of Freebird?
Don't mess with Freebird.
Don't fuck with Freebird.
No.
That's all we're
Don't.
asking here.
Don't do it.
I mean, but to be... And those guys were in their early 20s
Yep.
when they did that.
Yep.
And that's what's always been impressive to me is how good my stuff was in my early 20s versus what I'm doing. And I'm still doing some good stuff now, but it has always impressed me that the youth is capable of so much creativity.
So why do you think that was with you?
Well, in my experience, a lot of creativity comes from pain
Mhm.
and from just anxiety or trouble or hardship. And I think for new directors or musicians or whatever, it's almost a fight or flight response. It's like I've got to do something great
Right.
to get my name out there, and you've got a lot of great resources to draw from, childhood trauma or whatever it is. I find that the longer a career goes on, and I can't think of a single example of this, where an artist continues to maintain the level of quality. I mean, even your McCartneys and your Lennons.
Yeah.
I mean, once those guys split up, to me, they each have maybe 1 or 2 good
Right.
tracks. But the Beatles catalog is
It is what
instantly
it is.
repeatable
Yeah.
forever.
Yeah.
And I think once you get comfortable and you don't have anything to worry about, it just becomes a job, maybe. But I think when you're young and you're figuring life out, you're just in that phase. And again, not like we talked about this earlier, not that you have any great wisdom,
Right.
but you're just willing to try new things.
Right.
You know, back then I didn't worry about what a song should be structured like.
Right.
I'm gonna put a little riff here, and I'm gonna do this, and then we were kind of talking shit about it when we were working up for Durham Fest, and I was like, man, why are these arrangements so damn weird? Like, and he was like, hey, that was all you, man.
It's on you.
Trying to do something different.
Right.
It's like, God, kids are stupid. We shouldn't have done all this. But it was just trying to do something different back then, you know? And your emotions are, especially for guys, I can't speak to women, but guys in their early 20s, you know, you're just a flood of emotions, and you're not allowed to show them, right? So as an artist, I'm going to push everything I have into this, and I just think the youth has a lot to say and a lot of creative ways to say it, whereas the older you get, I think you just kind of get tempered, and like I said earlier, I'm kind of a lazy songwriter now. It's just if I can just get a chord progression and a good melody. Now, if I get something really good, I'll try and, you know, maybe make a little something better out of it, but...
So
you're hungry
when you
you're young.
When you were younger, though, even though you were feeling all this, you said you wrote your songs so that you could take it 3 or 4 different ways. You were pouring out. You weren't vulnerable enough that anybody would actually know what you're talking
from a
about.
lyrical standpoint, yeah.
Right.
But from a musical standpoint, it was the opposite. I want to do something cool that somebody who, as a musician, might say, all right, that's kind of a neat little thing you did there, you know. It was definitely more about the music than it was the lyrics. Because what do you have to say when you're 20? You know? It was almost more of a musical expression than... I didn't really care about lyrics then. But I wrote some badass music.
Right.
And I got lucky on some of the lyrics. So I'm pretty proud of our Carry Me Home album. I was 24 when I wrote that. But I just think there's something going on with younger people when they start.
So, with you sitting here now having that experience in your past of having a disc of some really good songs, okay, you're sitting here now at your age, you're still writing, but you're saying more your vulnerability shows, or?
Well, lyrically, yes. It'd be a lot easier for me to write just in plain language what I'm feeling versus trying to veil it 3 times and create like some kind of passcode, you know, to unveil the songs. But then again, it all goes back to passion, because I'm writing some of the best songs I've ever written right now, but it's because I'm playing with my son. And it's so, whereas I used to think it came from pain and just raw emotion, I'm wondering if I was just mistaking that for passion in general. Because now I'm not some angsty teenager who's struggling to find his place in the world. You know, like I'm married with kids and have a job, and I'm, you know, not a real sexy place to be from a 20-year-old perspective. But I'm having such fun playing with him. Like, man, if we're gonna do this, it's got to be badass. Yeah. You know, you almost. You got to set the standard a little higher. I'm playing with my son now. I can't be doing this lazy shit I've been doing. So I think really more than anything, it's just about the passion and how much. But that's with anything. If you really love whatever you're doing, you're going to put that much more into it. When you don't have anybody to play with and you're just writing by yourself and your band's not really together, and that's good enough. Right. You know. But if you got somebody you got to show it to. Yeah. And I think that's part of it too. When you're young, you're dependent on your band, and you know you're trying to show off. You're trying to make it. You want people to notice you. You got a reason, right? You know, and then maybe once you're established, you've already had 10 number ones or your Grammys, and you're a millionaire. What's another fucking album, right? You know, you're not going to put the effort in, maybe.
And you know, for like really popular acts, you can look at James Taylor, for instance. I love James Taylor. And you can go, well, everything he's written of recent, no matter how he tries, they're great songs, but no matter how he tries, they'll never capture the sound of You Got a Friend.
But is that because of where you are?
Right.
When you were hearing it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's that too. Absolutely. There's a time and a place where you resonate maybe with your, I don't know, there's so many variables.
Yeah, you know, and here's the other thing. Something fun for me to do, I'll take, like a song like You've Got a Friend, just print a copy and just look at just start looking at the meter of it and look at the rhyming structure, and pretty soon you'll go, this thing was all over the place, and he was internally rhyming. He was rhyming out here. He had plenty of lines that didn't rhyme. The song sounds so together, but if you look at the structure to the song, you're going like, oh my gosh, he was all over the place on that. And what a phenomenal song, you know.
Yeah.
So.
And a lot of those old sessions, like Steve Miller, too, there's some weird licks in those songs that are just, they feel improved. Like maybe they had a minute left to maybe do an overdub, and it just, sometimes the first thing you come up with, just messing around, is the coolest thing you can do, rather than putting too much thought into it.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know, but I've just got my limited experience as a songwriter. I never did make much money at it. You know, maybe a few shows here and there, you'd get paid a little bit.
Right.
Would cover your gas to the next show. But I would imagine that people who do it for a living, you know.
Look, here, man. If you played those kind of shows, you have to consider yourself a professional. Very, 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 very few people get to do that.
Yeah, that's
okay.
fair.
And so the fact that anybody gave you $1, that's even more verification of it. So you can say at those particular times that that's what you were doing.
Yeah.
And that's cool. That's cool. You know.
It was a cool time in my life for sure. It was one of those things that when I came down to have to make the decision between family and band, you know, it was easy at the time because, you know, any night I was doing band practice I don't get to see the kids that night at all. And they're young, you know. I'm like, I'm not willing to sacrifice it. It'll still be there. And so doing these shows now that the kids are into the music, because they were the ones who got a Durham Fest to happen. I don't know if I've told you that story, but Walter was like, when are you going to do a Durham Fest out here? I was like, one of these years. And he goes, you need to do it this year, you're never going to do it.
Yeah.
And so I was like, all right, I'll text the guys and see what they say, knowing that they would not be available. So I sent them all a message, like right in front of them, and within 5 minutes they were like, yes, let's do it. I was like, shit, now we got to do it.
Yeah.
And we did it, and it was just a great experience to be able to do that again and to play again. And after 12 years, it's always amazing how fast it comes back. You know, you got a little rust on those first couple songs, and then that third one comes out, and I say, that's why we used to be good, is we got it right there.
Yeah.
You know,
that's awesome.
Yeah, it's fun.
After that passage of time,
we played almost. Let's see, we played from 2003 to 2012, almost straight through, so 9 years.
Wow.
Playing almost every weekend, and.
But you guys did lock down a bunch of just muscle memory together as a unit.
Oh yeah. We had a ton of our core stuff. I mean, we were playing 3-hour sets back then.
Yeah.
You know, we just go, and there were gigs that just required either 3 hours. You had to bring an opening act, and we said, we'll just take it.
We'll do 3 hours.
We'll do 3 hours, and of course a lot of covers involved in that back then.
Right.
But, you know, covers are good too because it keeps you learning other things and gives you a different perspective.
Just like I was talking about breaking down that song. If you're playing somebody else's song, you are learning.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can put your spin on it too. And there's so many great covers that have been put out that even songs I didn't know when they had first come out. I'd hear a song and, that's a cover of this and this. But I definitely have kind of come a long way in the cover thing. If not for just showing a new generation what greatness there was back then. Well, we always did a good job of playing music from all eras in the household. So our kids, you know, really didn't even know what newer music was.
Right.
It was all
they
stuff from
were
the
exposed
60s.
to everything.
Yeah, it was just basically the playlist that we had from, you know, the 60s up through the early 2000s. And so now they're kind of finding what they like and delving into that stuff. But, man, it's a powerful thing, music. And
well, I mean, just think about it. Think about music in church and what that can do in your heart, in your spirit. Okay, so all these songs, the ones that nail you like that, the ones that you remember,
they really resonate.
They are a little focus of spirit, I think. Really, you know.
Jimmy Page once described it as being able to communicate with, I don't remember the exact quote, but it was something where he could communicate between dimensions into what he called the ether.
Mm-hmm.
It was another dimension where these melodies existed, but he had the ability to reach into there and grab things out.
Right.
And I have felt a relationship with that dimension.
Sure.
Where this is, and maybe that's sounds kind of ridiculous, but a lot of people can't write a melody at all, whereas some people can write them easily and make them sound unique. And I've always had that ability to write kind of unique melodies, but it's always felt like it's almost like sticking a syringe through a wall and just kind of
Pulling it
sucking.
out.
So there's something so much greater than behind that wall.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think one of the things that we do is we get too finite with things, and I mean, seriously, if we recognize that everything in here is a series of atoms smashing together
ultimately.
to make that for this particular moment, and our eyes seeing that, and our ears hearing that. I think that and just energy, that never gets wasted. And you release that into the universe. I do believe that there's a very spiritual thing that does happen there, and it's a connection deeper than I heard this song. It had really cool lyrics, and the beat was good.
Right.
It's like, no, there's something about that song.
Yeah.
If it's just one line or three words, or something about the melody that touched me in a way that's the mystery of all this. This is the mystery of life, really.
Yeah.
It's just the connection of all this stuff. I mean,
yeah, that's taking it to a whole new level. What were some songs for you that you heard that just changed your life?
Oh, man. I love Bob Dylan. So, Don't Think Twice. I love the band. So, like,
they
the
got a
weight.
new movie coming out about Dylan.
I don't know.
The kid from Dune.
Oh,
is
really?
playing him. Yeah.
Really?
Which kind of makes sense. He
Yeah.
kind of looks like him already.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a trailer out for it now. I don't
That'll
know
be
what
cool.
it's called, but yeah, check out that trailer.
Yeah.
It looks cool. So Dylan, and again, just remind me one more time when you graduated.
So I graduated in '77.
Okay. So when Dylan came out, you were pretty young.
Yeah, I wasn't a Dylan fan until way later on because
Okay.
he just sounded like
That's what I was gonna
scratching
ask.
his fingers on the chalkboard to me.
Yeah.
And then I started listening to lyrics, and I started going, "Wow,"
Yeah.
And he was here's a guy that could sing better, and he didn't. He did it to make a certain sound
Yeah.
that he wanted people to hear. And all the record executives go like, "You're terrible. You're the worst vocalist I ever heard." He's going, "No, this is the way I sing for these songs."
Yeah, he's certainly not my cup of tea vocally,
Mm-hmm.
but if you can get past that and read his lyrics, he's
Well, in poetry, hey man, that's the thing is this,
Yeah.
But I think I love the weight. The band did some great songs. That's one of my favorites right there. So you can kind of see the kind of the thing I was running in. I'm still a big Leonard Skinner fan, and that may seem sophomoric to some people, but man, like Simple Man and
dude, I don't
those
know how
songs,
that's sophomoric. Their early stuff.
that was just good songs.
that
man.
first album.
And I could
was
hear it.
pronounced Leonard Skinner.
Yep.
Wasn't the first one. Yeah.
When I hear the whistle on Freebird,
Yeah.
okay, I instantly,
Yeah.
instantly go there. So there were songs that maybe those songs I really loved. I played them over and over again. I loved Aerosmith,
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, my dad was a massive Aerosmith fan. I kind of got into them in the 90s when they kind of had their resurgence.
Right.
They put the Get a Grip album out in the early 90s, and that had some bangers on it.
Mhm.
But it was kind of neat that Aerosmith had always been pretty good at reinventing themselves.
And they did some really great songs.
Yeah.
And then stuff will hit me out of the blue that nobody's ever, like the song I sent you.
Yeah.
Babylon, I think was the name of it.
Yeah.
There was something about the meter, the way
Yeah.
that was done. It was just like, it was a spiritual experience to listen to the song.
Yeah, it was a cool track. I'd never heard that before.
Yeah. And so nobody knows that guy, but it's a wonderful song,
Yeah.
And I like those kinds of
How many
things.
people, I always wonder this, for every, I don't know, Taylor Swift that happens, how many somebodies are of equal or greater talent that nobody ever finds.
Plenty.
Hundreds of them.
Because there's tons of people that are really great musicians, really great songwriters, and they had to go to work. They didn't have a chance to go and try to get crazy and do something. They needed to go to work.
Think about how many people shy. I know people who
they don't want to get
can
in front of
play
people.
like an angel and just can't do it in front of people.
So, I think that there's probably way, way, way more really great songs out there than that have been published.
Yeah. That's what I always wonder is how many of the people that you would see in a grocery store are super talented at something.
Mm-hmm.
We just see people and we just kind of, I don't know, that's another human being, but how many great stories does everyone have to tell?
Yeah. Everybody's got stories.
Well, that's what I mean. Like, I almost feel like if everybody would just start a podcast.
Yeah.
and
Tell some stories.
Just hang out.
Yeah.
And talk to people.
Right.
Because I feel like, especially in an election year, it's tribe this, tribe that, and I definitely have my beliefs, but I'm also not super tied to them. But I do have my opinions. But I'm willing to learn. I'm willing to listen. But it's such a nasty season for our country because there's a lot of hate and a lot of
unfound, not needed.
Yeah, completely unneeded. And if we, as both sides, realize that there's powers at play who are trying to manipulate all of us.
Yeah.
Just
including our own
acknowledge
government.
that. Including our, yes! That's a whole nother episode.
Yeah.
Right there we could get down into. But yeah, man, I feel like it's a nasty time, election season in this country.
It is, and it's been really bad for the last few cycles. And again, I'll blame that on myself. I think that a lot of it is just the ease and ability now to see something you think kind of cool and click a button and send it to everybody to comment on around the world. It's like if you had to sit down and look at that and see what it really said and figure out if you really believe that or whatever, it would take time. And you don't have time because it's super easy now to throw something out. It's absolutely a lie.
Yeah.
And it's probably being sent to you by a foreign government, but our government will gladly use.
Well, have you seen the pictures of these? You brought it up earlier, the Russian bot farms.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they'll have these phones up. Joe Rogan showed it on his show once. They've got these phones just lined up against the wall on these stands, and they'll have people standing in line. So you'll have 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 phones in front of you in your section. And as far as the eye can see, people just answering messages, tweeting shit.
Yeah, and both sides. Sides.
Yeah.
The whole idea here is not to set up somebody, it's to keep us doing this.
Yes.
Because the greatest strength we have is what we already talked about.
Exactly.
Okay? And they can't have that actually happen.
No.
I asked myself the question, I think, I looked it up in the federal elections this cycle. So it was more in 2020. It was $18 billion. This year it's going to be close to $16 billion. Okay? There's no way you can spend that kind of money and not be beholden to people. But here's the point. That money also makes it really easy to go, I'll push a viewpoint I actually don't even believe if it will keep me in power, right? Okay, so I think the scary part about it is that those guys know where those types of posts are coming, and they're sending them. They know they know where they're from, but it's like they're vested in the same thing. Let's keep everybody at each other because we get rich if we do.
Yeah.
And so it's horrific. I saw something on the news the other day. Finland, of course, is neighbors to Russia. They start media education like from kindergarten, teaching these kids how to discern between what's right or wrong, teaching them how to research, teaching them how to know when they've got a fake photo, teaching them all these things all the way through. And the reason is because these dudes get bombarded 40 times worse than we do. They're a next door neighbor. And so they're going like, it's about our existence that our people know how to discern between something that may be true or something outright lie that's been told and sent to us. So we have to know how to do this if we're going to stay a society.
Right.
So it's kind of interesting that are we there? Maybe we are. Maybe
we need to be.
You know,
we need to be. But I also feel like state-run media, or at least advertised media, is set up to fail. If your advertisers are controlling, or even if it's the government,
yeah,
like there needs to be a separation of media and state.
Yeah,
like, because that is a nasty relationship.
Yeah, I mean, it's the worst.
Yeah.
So
what happened to what would you investigative journalists? Like, where have those gone? They have their own shows.
They are still there, but they don't get airtime.
They don't get airtime.
You know, and I think that's really what it comes down to is what most people take for the news now is the talking heads.
Right.
There's 4 or 5 of them sitting around the table correcting each other or whatever.
Right.
But the fact is they're going down a road that they want to create, and it makes money.
Yes.
So this is really comes down to
always
just like Facebook, butts in the seat.
Yep.
Make the money.
Absolutely.
So, you know, and then to teach us to hate each other over stuff that just really doesn't matter, man. You know, it's just
it doesn't.
Because we're all, you know, like, dude, I'm 65. If I live a really ripe old age, I get another 20, 25, 30. I'm to the point now where none of this political stuff actually makes me happy.
Yeah, no.
It attacks me.
Yeah.
In every way, and it makes me get real vindictive and stuck in a rut of something that I don't need to do. Yeah. And it also makes me fearful, and it also makes me all the things that these conditions we're talking about we don't need.
Yeah.
You know, so, and that was one thing we're going to talk about tonight. Let's just kind of get more open about that. You know, just my outcome of this, one of the outcomes I'd like to see here is that if anybody ever goes, hey, whatever happened to Wes, I can hand them the episode and go, here's how you know what happened to Wes, you know, because these are things that nobody knows, nobody, you know, so.
Well, none of us really know shit, and I think most people think they know a lot. But if you can just openly admit, I really don't know much at all. I'm still learning, and I think that's the difference between a young man and an older man who's gained some wisdom. You know, the young man's a fool no matter what.
Yeah, and we're created in these fake it till you make it things.
Yeah,
and I find that like most people can tell you. One of the most popular books in the church is Revelation.
Yeah.
Okay. And I never would teach out of it. And the reason I would.
Why would you?
The reason I would is because I didn't see any gain from it. There were some things in that book that you want to teach, but to make it as a roadmap, I didn't see any gain to it. But I did see a lot of opportunities to turn it into something it wasn't.
Yeah.
Okay. So, but when you drill down on people and you go, okay, so what do you really believe the book of Revelation is trying to tell you? They hadn't read it. Now that's the thing that, first off, or they read 3 chapters and said, this is nuts. Okay. Yeah. So everything they know about Revelation has been handed down to them by whatever the denomination that they're in told them it's going to be.
Absolutely.
It's been monetized. It's been all this. So you get these little snippets of things that you can say, but you really drill down to it, and you know you really hadn't read it.
And you can't even source it in the pages necessarily. Yeah.
Yeah, and so it's because religion, not all religion. Once again, not trying to hurt anybody's feelings. A lot of it that appears on TV is solely built to make you fearful.
Yeah, certainly.
Please get our survival bucket. Jesus coming back anytime. It's going to be bad.
Yeah.
Okay. And so it's a business, right? And that's certainly what most people hear and what most people understand, you know, and really look at nothing else. You know, like, wow, that letter probably meant something that was to somebody that was alive.
Well, that's what I'm wondering. Like, do you think that those events have already come to pass, that they were a metaphor for what was happening when that letter was written? Because there's a school of belief that believes that.
Right. There's a couple of ways that it can be interpreted. if I was going to take the literal interpretation of it, that's where I would put it.
Mm-hmm.
The reason that's generally not is they have a later date of authorship.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so a lot of books, and this is not just it's in all literature, look backwards. In other words, you see huge chunks of information in Matthew about Jesus talking about what's coming.
Yeah.
Okay, which did come
Yeah.
in 70 AD. But it's being written, most people think, Matthew probably somewhere in the 80s. Well, if it was written in the 80s, that's 10 years past the event that he was
Right.
talking about.
Right.
Now, that doesn't mean he didn't say that and it wasn't true.
Sure.
Okay? But you're looking back this way on it.
Right.
It's a whole different deal.
Right.
Revelation could be that way. Revelation could be looking back to 70 AD.
Yeah.
Okay? And a lot of people, preterist viewpoint is that it's all happened, and it is exactly the reports of what happened over that 7-year period in Jerusalem, in Israel, are exactly match.
Right.
And it's a very powerful thing, because you look at it, you're going like, wow. I mean, really, a lot of these things this metaphors would have been metaphors for things that actually happened.
Yeah.
So that's a viewpoint. Then there's a millennialist viewpoint, one that's in the future, and it may be. I don't know.
Yeah. None of us really know.
No, but you always start with point A, and that is that when this letter got written, it didn't get written to our century. There was somebody there reading what that was, and 3 times, Revelation tells you this will shortly happen.
Right.
So if I'm sitting there in 70 AD or 80 AD or so, wherever, if I'm sitting there and I happen to have that in front of me, I would read it. It's like, holy cow, this could happen anytime.
Yeah.
Right? And the letter actually says shortly.
The letter does. Yeah.
Right? So that's the problem with it, because if you go too literal with it, where does it end? If you go too figurative with it, it's just somebody's dream or vision, right?
Yeah.
But I think literally, I do believe that you could make a very good case biblically for at least the 4 big ways of understanding Revelation, which means that we're never going to agree, and we're never going to get to a place where that you can go, oh, that's absolutely that, because it fits all these other ones too.
Yeah. Well, that's the brilliance of being vague, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then you can, and the thing is, I know these people are wonderful people I'm talking about.
Yeah.
That really study and really are into this stuff.
Yeah.
A lot of them. I mean, really are.
Mm-hmm.
And they see it differently than me. But what's really cool, and I think about the guys that mentored me, all of them let me have my headway. I moved out of the dispensational camp, the future. I moved out of that very early, and these guys were mentoring me, and they never told me not to believe that.
Right.
So I have to respect the fact that these guys are going, I've got 2 doctorates in that. I can tell you every way we're going, but I'm going to let you go your way. That's
Well, see, I walked
respect
away from the millennialist view that is
Mm-hmm.
says it's future.
Future.
I kind of walked away from that quietly. I didn't tell anybody.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think it might have already come to pass.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's so vague that you can kind of apply it to any generation. I remember my mom saying, Pat Robertson says it's all lining up right here.
Right.
And okay, well, this was in the early 90s, and that didn't happen, right? And so then you applied it to the George Bush era, and then you applied it to the Obama
and the book's
era.
been used throughout history to do just
exactly that.
Okay.
Which is a cause of fear in my
Right,
mind.
it's a cause of fear. Now, there are people that interpret Revelation just at that. This is an ongoing pattern throughout humanity.
Sure.
And if you go this route, this is what it looks like.
Right.
War, death, pestilence happens every time.
Yeah, it happens every time.
And,
I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of like the Ouroboros. It's a constant.
So it's a
cyclical-
constant warning,
Yeah.
and it will be.
There's always
in
a
the year
beast, an
3000,
Antichrist,
it will
yeah.
be as applicable then
Yeah.
as now.
Yeah.
So we're
I
not
kinda
looking for a
like that.
hard,
Well, you
prophetic
almost-
outcome.
Sure.
We're going like it's just a cycle.
But you can see it apply to patterns almost.
Yeah.
And that
Yeah.
in itself is pretty impressive. It's like Alice in Wonderland with Dark Side of the Moon. It lines up
Oh yeah.
twice.
Yeah.
Like, have you experienced that?
I've done the Wizard of Oz and what? was
Oh
that?
yeah, Wizard
Pink
of Oz. I
Floyd?
said Alice in Wonderland. Yeah, Wizard of Oz. Sorry.
But I mean, how do we know? I mean,
It's
that one
wild.
makes a lot of sense.
You've experienced it though. Like you've seen.
Oh
it.
yeah, that thing
worked.
is weird. Yeah, it does work.
Yeah,
Absolutely,
it works.
Yeah, which is another thing about it. If you take it from the other viewpoint of it's actually going to be fulfilled at some point, then all through history. I mean, my mother told me that everybody in the States when World War II broke out thought that Hitler was the Antichrist.
Really?
Yeah.
That's an
Now
interesting perspective.
they're from Arkansas, down there in South Arkansas, in that Assembly of God thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they were getting taught a lot of this, and so that was the opinion. This guy is the Antichrist. Well, if you think about it, the Scripture doesn't name a person; it is a spirit. It is against Christ's spirit,
Right.
right? And if there's ever been anybody that was that, it was Hitler.
Sure.
Okay, so I think it can be interpreted multiple ways. I'm out of. I don't. The dispensational route was just too clumsy and took too much information to make it work
Yeah.
for me
Yeah.
scripturally, and that's really the reason I bailed. So, there's some infections that come out of that too, and that is. If that's your hardcore belief, you're probably believing in a literal, restored Israel. And so it can make a lot of really bad policy mistakes.
Well, I was going to ask you, kind of in closing, what is your general take on the Israel-Palestine thing right now?
It's like everything. You have this religious function here that know this is our property, and you've got people being just terrible to each other. That kidnapping thing, it's just the most horrific thing I've ever heard of. I mean, that's just brutal. Okay, well, so you're going to shoot at each other over that stuff. It's just the way it is.
Yeah.
But from my perspective, it's like, people, let's work with each other and see. The problem is that can't really happen because there are religious promises here
That contradict. And that is an impasse.
And here's something you may not be aware of, but that's a big portion of what's happening in Ukraine right now too.
Well, educate me on that.
Okay. So, in the breakup of the Soviet Union,
Right.
everybody went their own way. One of the things that happened in that is the Russian Orthodox Church in Moscow was actually the home church and was over all the other states that were involved religion. Well, they lost that in a way.
Okay.
So, like, if you look at other places like Poland, they'll have their own patriarch. Now, that person might report back up or may not. They may be asking for autonomy. Okay. But there's a promise that this land was, once again, promised to this church. Okay. So, the Slav-speaking world is the ones that they want back under the Russian Orthodox Church. So, Putin became a saved guy, and this Bishop Kirilli, that is the patriarch now. He's a hawk. He's a war hawk. He's like, you got to do
Really?
whatever you can
See, this is
to
all-
bring those people back into the fold.
Okay.
Okay. So
It's all news
that
to
goes
me.
with that is population. because
Yes.
what they really want to do is boost their population because it's dying like a lot of countries.
Yes, it is.
Right. So there is a religious context to this that really does have real meaning because that's pumped to them in the form of propaganda to the people. So when they tell them that the Russian Orthodox Church is the only thing that's holding the Antichrist back right now, and that the entire West is nothing but a bunch of demons, okay, you got a guy standing there telling people in these towns that he and Putin are standing against the absolutely overrunning of demons in your country. We are the spiritual wall,
Right.
and we've got to restore our borders.
Right.
So that component is there.
Yes.
And so that's actually, in some senses, still a holy war in that one, too.
Okay, I didn't know that aspect of it. I'm glad you shared that with me. That puts it into a whole new perspective I'm going to have to sit on for a minute. What do you think about Zelensky personally?
I think he's like everybody else on planet Earth. You get enough money and fame and power,
You want to do some lines of cocaine?
you're going to do whatever you're going to do. And he's been very effective at talking about the plight of his country. But that doesn't make me say that everything he's done is right or whatever.
Right.
But, you know, once again, if everybody just behave, it would be much better. But if you own the media and you're telling people that there are literally demons on your border, what does that make you want to do?
Yeah.
When the leader of your church, it's one, nobody else gets to compete in there much, tells you
Sure.
we're standing between the Antichrist coming here, you know what that's like.
Well, you could equate this to, and regardless of your opinions on Trump, but if you call a guy Hitler for 8 years, is it any surprise that somebody takes a shot at him?
Oh, yeah.
That's rhetoric, right? I mean, you heighten rhetoric.
I would like to have seen all the rhetoric on both sides
Sure.
in this election. Just go like, stop it.
Mhm.
Just quit. You're making people hate each other that
Right.
don't need to hate each other,
I think we align very much on that.
you know.
You know.
And so, you know, I guess going back to Jerusalem or to Israel is they have a right to be there, and it's the real right is being supported in that it's a democracy and it's religion. Okay, big support from us, and you have these other guys that are Muslims, and nobody. You know, I mean, the two shall not meet. So I don't know how you fix it.
Well, but from the Muslim perspective, we've got a right to be here as well.
Exactly.
And
Well, and I think this whole thing comes from, you know, really until the Zionist movement in the early 1900s.
right.
Those guys were all living there together.
Yeah.
Christians, Jews.
Well,
and
didn't the
Muslims.
Ottoman Empire have that land until World War One? The British kind of got involved, and then they were using Palestinians to fight for them, but they were borrowing money from the Jewish banks, and it was. It's a very complex.
It's a very complex story.
Yeah, it's not just.
But what the real thing that happened there is I try to remember the guy's name, but he was like honestly trying to do something good by coming into Israel and going, we've got to get a homeland for the Jews because they just come out of all the pogroms in Russia,
the Russian pogroms,
right, and all that kind of stuff. He's going, we need a place that people can come home and not be molested.
Yeah.
But it was that, of course. Now you got three people sharing one piece of land, and they're okay with it. They've been working on it a long time.
Right.
But they don't want to do that because everything's okay. But what happened was the money that was supplied to this guy, they started buying up the farms.
Yeah.
Okay. And eventually they were using outside money to purchase this land mass.
Right.
Okay. And then when they would take that over, it'd be like somebody coming to your house and going like, hey, you know, get your crap and get out.
We
I
just
own
bought
this
this.
now.
Yeah.
Okay. And that started creating a lot of the feelings. So everybody has a point here.
Yeah.
But the point is going to drive them to absolutely kill each other. And sooner or later, you got to find a way to make that work, or you just do what we're talking about.
But I guess
Destroy each
my
other.
point in asking the question is, so this is why, again, I feel politically homeless. Because if I talk to somebody on the right and I'm like, well, you know, you support Israel, right? Well, I support the right to exist, but there's been a lot of shit that's gone down prior to this. And it's like, well, they don't want to hear that. But if you talk to somebody on the left, it's, you support Palestine, right? Well, I do, but also, you know, there's nuances and there's gray areas, but we're so tribal in America that if you're on the right, you support Israel no matter what. If you're on the left, it's pro-Palestine no matter what. And both sides are wrong and both sides are right.
Yeah.
But neither of them really is educated on any of it. I'm not educated on it, but I know a little bit because I'm trying to learn.
You know, here's the thing. Even now, like in certain parts of Palestine, they will they'll shut the water off for 3 days or just do crazy stuff that you're going like, why would you do that? You're just making people mad. And then you got these guys come over and do that terrible thing they did. They do that kind of stuff. They fling rockets over there all the time. It's like, why are you doing that? You know?
I've never had more of a juxtaposition than when, was it Sinwar that they killed this last week? Going on X and just searching for his name. Half of them are he's a martyr who served in a concentration camp for all these years, and the other side is he died a coward, right? There's no gray in the middle. There is a positive and a negative narrative about this guy, and you can't get to the middle of it
because the ideologies are what
so
you're not
tribal.
Yes, you're
right.
not going to get.
But
through
even
it.
in America.
But I mean, you know, I love that Gandhi said, you know, an eye for an eye makes the whole world blind. Sooner or later, these will end. All these things we're talking about will end. But the hatred will still exist for generations. Yeah. And it's like there is no way to get out of that situation if you've got to keep killing each other. I mean, it's like, I wonder, you know, I wonder a lot. What are you really trying to get here? What piece of land or what is it? I mean, this is a world economy. You can make a living anywhere. What is it? Okay, well this is the promise. This is a promised. Yeah, this is the promised land.
Right.
Okay. So the thing about that is it was being not always, but fairly peacefully shared for a long, long time.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And they'd worked out ways that, hey, you know, you guys are here on Saturday, and you guys
right.
And they'd worked that out amongst themselves.
They had kind of didn't they share that? Do you think this is the harbinger of a larger war that's inevitable?
You know, I mean, I look at stuff and I go like, I don't know how it doesn't happen, because of just the fragility of the people you're looking at. Right. And I mean, if you look at Iran, it would take, you know, like 2 missiles to destroy every bit of their oil capacity, moving capacity at the Straits of Hormuz. There's one little island there where it all comes through. It don't take much. Okay. When you do that, you knock all the income out for them. You also knock the whole world that much oil. And it's not huge, but I mean, I think they're the 3rd producer or something.
Yeah, but that's still a lot.
Yeah. It's a lot of oil.
You knock your supply chain
we
sideways.
Seriously, we would cover ourselves. The rest of the world would be hurt.
Yeah.
And you look at China. I mean, nothing. There's
Can
really
we cover ourselves?
Huh?
Can we cover ourselves?
Yeah, we can.
Okay.
Yeah, we export. What I understand, the only place that would really be hammered by it's California because they don't have any pipelines.
Right.
And they don't frack.
Yeah.
But anywhere where there's fracking, you know, we're like awash in oil right now. As a matter of fact,
go ahead, finish your thought.
You know, I mean, if you look at the moving average on oil right now, it's set to break again down. Okay.
Yeah.
And Saudi Arabia wants to pump.
Yeah.
Right now, they want to run it down. You know, like I think the average cost of a well in Oklahoma is about $45 a barrel. So if it gets anything below that, they'll shutter some of it.
Yeah.
You know.
What is your opinion on fracking?
You know, I'm sure. I think the ponds are the worst problem. I do think that fracking is a whole bunch better than it was when they started.
Agreed. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we've come a long way with it.
And it's still a nasty thing, but it's, you know, you have to be realistic some things.
Yeah.
I mean, this is my opinion. Once again, it's my opinion.
Yeah.
The future of this country will be electric in 25 years. That's fact.
You think so?
Absolutely. If
You don't think we'll find a better alternative?
there's a possibility that we will.
Because I hope we do.
Mm-hmm. There's a possibility that we will. But what we have right now that we know we have, this will suffice. Okay?
But it's not good.
In what way?
Well, the oil, just be dependent on oil.
No. The thing about oil
We
is
got to get off of this.
it
You would
runs.
agree.
Yeah, it runs.
Yeah.
It runs so many calories contained
Yeah.
in a gallon of it that there's nothing even can touch it.
Yeah.
If you're a thinking man, you go, how do I get everybody off of it that doesn't need to be on it so that I've got the diesel I need for ships and trucks
Sure.
and all this stuff,
But see, that's a thinking man's.
right? Instead of throwing it all out and going, oh, it's all terrible.
Right, which is what I think a lot
Right.
of people on one side try and do. Just get rid of
You
all
ever
of
been
it.
to Manhattan?
But I have never
Okay.
been, no.
Oh, I forget how many. It's like 14 million people right in there.
Yeah.
Okay, and not one single soul needs anything but an electric car.
Right.
We don't have any chargers.
Right,
Okay.
right.
So you could take off, when I'm not gonna say every single soul. You still need service vans and stuff like that.
Sure.
But by correctly charging that area, you could take that much off the load.
Sure.
And here's where I'm at.
So
on
you're
it.
just saying you got to be strategic about
Yeah,
it.
be strategic.
You can't just say
there's
cut
no,
this
there's
shit
no,
off.
no. If you believe the IEAE, I think whatever it is, they're the people that keep the numbers for the oil industry.
Yes.
Okay, they would say at current levels of what we're producing, we have 65 years of oil under our feet. Okay, we have about 128 years of coal, and natural gas is even more than that.
Yeah.
Okay. So here's the thing. Instead of just throwing it all over the world, because we're exporting about 20% of ours now, instead of doing that, okay, why not take care of what we've got and ensure that we've got heavy industrial fuels where we need it? You're not going to replace gasoline in a truck.
Yeah.
I mean, they show you these battery-powered trucks, and I guess they're probably okay. But the fact is, we're going to need 18-wheelers running on diesel for the foreseeable future,
Yeah.
unless, of course, hydrogen or something like that comes along,
Sure.
in my opinion.
Well, have you seen some of the stories about these guys who have invented vehicles that run on hydrogen and they get killed by the CIA? And
I see those kinds of things, and I do think that kind of stuff probably has and maybe even does happen. But most of the big things that are going on right now are large corporations,
well, sure, but if you came up with something like that,
Mm-hmm.
you destroy. I mean, it is a threat to national security. You collapse.
Yeah. And I think that's where we're at. Rather than run down everything that the oil industry does, we need to understand they do some really good things. I'm really glad to have my truck sitting right out there today.
Yeah.
Now, someday, if that's a truck that'll get me a long ways on an electrical charge, my wife works she teaches. So she's a mile and a half from her school.
Right.
We drive a gas car, and you know what? We could easily drive an electric car. Okay.
Yeah.
So the thing of it is, if I said, here's how I see it. This ain't got nothing to do with me and you. What this
Yeah.
got to do with what do we leave our kids
Yeah.
and our grandkids and our great grandkids. I would love to set them up with renewable stuff that would power us the way we need to be powered so we can continue going. But you can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. You can't walk out and go, hey, everybody's going to have an electric car in 3 years. Like, no, that
Well,
won't
see,
work.
no, that's a rational answer to that. I agree. I'm with you. We got to get off gas, but we can't just
No.
flip a switch and get
No.
off like your 18-wheelers that
You
are
just can't do that.
moving the supply
It just
chain across the
won't work.
country.
Now, can we make better ways to move things? You bet. Rail's a good way to move things. When we do all these things, yeah. But it takes a commitment from our country to go, you know what? This is what we're going to do, because it ain't about whether I like a windmill right now or not.
Right.
It's where is my kid going to be in this?
Right, but how do you eliminate the greed that
Well,
stands in the way of progress?
it's
Because,
impo-
Wes, if you could eliminate greed, how many hundreds of years would we be down the future?
Well, go. If that one human emotion was gone, I would say that we'd be like flying around in spaceships
We're
right now.
Star Trek.
Right. Absolutely.
If you eliminate greed.
So,
but how do you do that?
Here's the thing that's the craziest deal about this. is there are places in Europe right now that do this. Like Norway
They
has
do what?
solar and wind,
Right.
and they're running their entire country off. Norway's got so much of it that they impose a fee on it because the cost is zero because they move so much to Russia. Okay, so they want people to get electric cars, so they have a battery storage system that they can pump excess current into. So all I'm trying to say
Really?
is if it works in other places,
It's got to work here.
it'll work here. This is a wild country. You go to Oklahoma, we're blowing some wind over there, you know.
Yeah.
And it just takes people sitting down instead of being mad at each other.
You're right.
So I recognize that oil companies have a right to do whatever they do in their business. And that doesn't make it clean or good, and everybody knows that. But is there a place we can get if we just all work together to go, for the next 20 years, we're going to do this? That I know that my great-great-grandchildren are going to be competitive on energy. It's going to be cleaner air, and it doesn't get all shipped off somewhere.
Well, like you said, okay, you're talking about a 20-year plan.
Mm-hmm.
When we basically in America have a 4-year plan that exists the life of a president and that it can have such drastic swings.
Mm-hmm.
China has a 100-year plan that they're actually closing in on.
Mm-hmm.
Very successful. How do you do stuff like that in America behind the scenes that's in power, that's still moving toward a goal that a new president can't just come in and wipe that off the board because of partisan politics?
And I'm with you. That
you know what I'm saying?
probably will never happen. This is the way I think it runs out. Someday we're fracking these wells out and there's nothing left in them, and then we go, oh God, we got to get some solar and wind or hydrogen or whatever we're going to do.
So you don't change unless you have to.
Right. Because that's what it'll be.
Right.
And we have these riches under our feet, you know, and it's like, let's save as much as we can. Let's move to a different place.
Yeah.
You're never going to eliminate it. You're not.
Not complete. Well, not for a long, long time.
Yeah, unless something. Okay, there's inventions coming I can't see now
Sure.
that might.
Yeah.
But you know, I don't think it's as simple as I'm a snob because I got an electric car or drill baby drill. I think
Right.
you have to look on all these things and go, what are we leaving people?
Well, I appreciate your ability to see both sides of it because I'm constantly stuck at seeing both sides, and both sides can be crazy and both sides can be rational, but there are points to draw from both of them. And we're in such a tribal time where it's that side is a threat to both sides are threats to democracy right now.
Right.
And
Well,
it's like, come on, bro.
If you're a large oil company, you know what your job is to do? It's to turn profits.
Well, it's like political science 101. The first thing they teach you is get in power, stay in power.
Yeah.
If you're a corporation,
You
stay in power.
return shareholder value. That's how the markets work.
That's exactly how it works.
Now, they have a right to do that up to the point that they've infringed on your right,
Sure.
okay, and made things worse.
Right.
But don't think that every one of these oil companies is not looking at what they're going to have. Oh, perfect example, El Dorado, Arkansas. Have you seen that?
I don't.
They're reclaiming lithium out of the old wells.
Okay, I've
down
heard some. I haven't
there.
dug into
I think
it
it's
yet.
Exxon has they're spending tons down there. Okay.
I'm hearing about the lithium mines.
Okay, so these guys know that they have a limited resource, and they want to run it down to the tank's empty just as we jumped over to the thing. But what would be better for us is if we all got together and go, this is what we want. We want clean air.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody in the world wants clean air or clean water or all those things. So we know what we're doing is nasty, and like I say, I think fracking's cleaner right now.
Yeah.
And let's just get together.
But why are things like fracking a political talking point? Why is it if you're on the left and you support fracking, you're kicked out of the tribe?
Well,
Things like that.
yeah, that's because it is a tribe. The fact is that all that sounds great until you ain't heating your home.
Sure.
Okay, so once again, this has to do with making us all prosper. Okay, and so this whole thing about let's go around and punch a whole bunch of oils to pump more oil that we're already exporting nearly 20% of. It's like, stop, quit.
Right.
There'll be a point in time not too far off before we need that.
We need it. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so now's a great time to pivot for oil companies to start pivoting, which I believe they are. So I do believe that that's happening, and because they're in business to make money. If that's building windmills, it's building windmills.
Right.
If they're making money, they're making money.
Yeah.
And their job is to do what they're doing, which is to make money and return shareholder.
Absolutely. Last question. What? So we've seen the kind of the advent of AI come on board. We're seeing a changeover from fossil fuels into electric. What do you think over the next 10 years is going to be the biggest transition for Americans?
Man, there's just so many things comes out. But I mean, honestly, if we can't learn to, love each other, as Jesus said, love your neighbors yourself. I don't care what flag you're flying. If we can't do that, which we talked earlier about, that's really happening.
Yeah.
But it's just like when you get around your tribe, you want to wave the flag.
Yeah.
Because people love each other, taking care of each other all the time.
Absolutely.
So we've got to get past this. We've got to survive social media. I think it's if we don't get past that, and we're strung out on bot farms hitting us all day long, we're going to hate each other. I think that's coming. I think the future is electric.
Do you think that's coming because we're learning?
Yes.
We're realizing what it does to us, and as long as we know and are armed with that intelligence, we can move past it.
You've probably, and I know I have, posted stuff back when I was on Facebook, okay, it was not right. It was some of the stuff we're talking about, okay?
Yeah.
And here's the thing. Sooner or later, you get wiser, I hope, where you go, that doesn't sound right. My sister comes out all the time. My sister lives with me. She's 80 years old, 79. She comes out every once in a while with the thing, hey, I just saw this and everything. And they go, okay, that doesn't pass the sniff test. Okay,
Right.
Where did you see that? Because... And she's a very educated person. I'm not saying that, but she just saw it, and it caused a reaction for her to want to say something to me about it. And then we'll look it up and find out it's false. But there has to be a commitment to truth. Pilate said when he washed his hands of Jesus, "What's truth?" Okay, what is truth? It'd be whatever you want it to be, but essentially there is one truth in this world. And I think loving your neighbor, loving God, loving your neighbor as yourself is the truth.
I like that. Just getting to the truth, the objective truth, regardless of...
I don't hate... Here's the deal. I don't hate the person. If I'm a drill baby drill guy, I don't hate the person who has an electric car.
Right.
If he goes and buys an electric car and that's what he wants, it's called freedom
That's what I love about your attitude, is you're a pro-freedom guy.
So you shouldn't be looking down on him, because he shouldn't be making fun of his car.
Yeah.
And nobody should be making fun of your gas car.
Right.
It's what we need to prosper right now.
Yeah.
We can't throw the world in a tailspin here, but we can get to a better place. I'm confident we can, if we can survive the hatred that's out there now.
I think those are the best closing remarks you could have had.
Okay.
Let's love each other, brother.
That's it. It's all about loving your neighbor.
All about loving them, and make it a better place than what you came into it.
That's your job as a human being.
Just a little bit at a time, I got a lot of flaws as a human being, and my goal every day is just be a little bit better than I was yesterday.
Yeah. So I kind of see it like this. It's like, when the two football teams are on the goal line and they're pushing each other, and somebody grabs the quarterback. I don't think it's legal anymore, but he grabs that quarterback, throws him. Our job is to throw humanity over the goal line. I think that's what a Christian truly is supposed to be doing. Okay. How do we move forward in a healthy way that loves my neighbor, that loves God, and is living in peace, people?
Well, what you said, though, to a lot of Christians I know, moving forward, moving with God, I think it's going to be a challenge for some people.
And once again, people are going to believe what they're going to believe, and I'm comfortable with them believing it. I would say that's my take on it, is that we have to learn the value of every person on this planet. We can't look down on anybody.
No, I agree. And like I've said many times tonight, there's value on both sides of the aisle. And there's resources on both sides. But we're limiting ourselves.
Putting ourselves in silos.
Oh, it's nuts.
We don't need to. I mean, if we were really about love, you know, and I'm talking about agape here. I'm talking about, you know, the love
Yeah.
that's is self-willed. If we really, if everybody in this, whether you were a Christian or not, grabbed that one word and said, "I'm going to live this way," what would the world look like?
Yeah. What would it? I
That's
wanna
the
know.
that's the radical idea of Jesus, right
know.
there. That's the radical part.
But I've tried to pose this question to both sides.
Mhm.
Said to somebody on the right, "Hey, the liberals have a lot to offer.
Mhm.
Name me one thing
Yeah.
that they have to offer."
Mhm.
Well, if they have nothing to offer, then what is your solution? Like, do you want to
Yeah.
eliminate?
Well,
you know what
yeah.
I mean? Yeah,
That's
I think
actually
they do.
that's
I think,
actually the thing.
I think
Let me eliminate my, you know,
whoever disagrees with
horrific.
me, and it's really horrific.
Yeah.
And everybody wants to point a finger at Hitler and say, "Oh, he was so terrible." But I think there are people right now
oh, absolutely,
in political spaces that would like to eliminate
all
anyone who
dissent,
disagrees with
all
them.
dissent, get rid of it all.
But bro, that's
It's
terrifying.
terrifying.
But
And I think, you know, I think that you're going to see in this election that whoever gets it, okay, like I say, I don't think one's better than the other. Whoever gets it, I think you're going to see. You just need to keep your Constitution handy because they're going to come
that's my biggest fear.
and try
either
their
way,
best to destroy it.
is that this has been purported as the last election.
Yeah,
And I think whoever gets in is going to fortify.
I would not doubt it. I would not doubt it. And have the regime and the Constitution written in a way that they can do it.
Yes.
Okay.
So I think,
But here's the other thing I know about American people is they ain't gonna take that line down once they see how it works.
well, see, I want to believe that, but then we also went through COVID, and I saw a lot of
Yeah,
bullshit.
let's just say that was a specialized thing. Here's the thing:
Maybe I hope
when
so.
when you come in and you're saying things that like the average kid that's had high school civics can tell you is wrong
Yeah.
because of how you're rewriting this or that. Okay, people will get tired of that because it's going to impact their daily life. Really, what gets rolled through in any of these ideologies, what they're showing people is the Trojan horse.
Mm-hmm.
It's what flows out of the belly of the beast after they come into power
Yeah.
that are really the intents and purposes of what they're trying to do. And I don't think that most people are going to want that once they feel it. I mean, that's my hope.
I hope you're right.
You
Hope
know?
you're right.
I hope we're like about freedom. You know, let's be free. It's a good thing.
It is. It's a beautiful thing, but freedom requires tolerance.
Yeah, absolutely.
You got to
You
tolerate.
cannot have your way. That's why libertarianism, for all its flaws, has one central tenet, and that is that, you know, you raise your family and you do what
Yeah.
you want to do because that's the way
I want to
you
do
want
it.
to do it.
Right.
And what I can't say is anything about it unless you aggress against me.
Right. But that has also been where I found myself, is in this libertarian space where people on the right
Mhm.
are pissed off because I
Mhm.
won't commit to this,
Mhm.
and people on the left are pissed because I won't commit to this. And it's like, why?
Well,
and
listen, here's the
why
deal.
can't I do it the way I wanna
I
do
don't
it?
trust either one of them.
I don't either.
So,
But you again, in America, you have to pick a tribe.
yeah. And I think for somebody that's looking at a different platform, it'll never happen because there's too much money involved in it.
Yeah.
But if we looked at it and we go, look, what if you could live your life without your neighbor? If you put hogs on his side over there and stink his house up, he can come and sue you for that.
Right.
Okay? So you don't aggress against your neighbor. You try to live with your neighbor. You might go over to him and go, listen, I'm going to have some hogs over here, and they might kind of smell a little bad. If it gets real bad, I'll move them over on this other. Okay, it's called working things out.
Yeah.
And I think people...
And maybe I'll give you a little bit of meat once harvest is done. And
I know it's a little bad, but you know I'll make sure you don't
take
eat
care
pork.
of you. Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and that's the community aspect of things.
No, I love
And
that
they go
about
over there
you.
and they go, that West guy's weird. And they go, well, yeah, he is. You know, but you know what? He's a good neighbor.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the only way out of this mess. This hatred just can't. Everybody's got to get out of each other's business.
Quit being a Karen.
You know,
Yeah.
let me live my life. If I aggress the law,
Right.
which we have too many of them now, if I aggress one of them,
I agree with you there too.
then you come talk to me about that. But up till that point, I want to live on my place with my family and live in freedom, and definitely not live in this bubble that's been built. I can't live that way. Mentally, I cannot live that way.
Speaking my language, brother.
You know.
I love it.
All right, brother. Been good.
Wes,
Hey, you gonna come out?
I'm coming out this weekend.
Good.
Yeah.
We'll carry on out there.
Bring my guitar with me.
Yeah, man, do. Let's hammer a few out.